Stott, holy shit. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Oh, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my gosh, I was so excited when you answered me back as quickly as you did, not only because you are in high demand right now from everything from your family to the military to being questioned about your friends and their relationships, which must be interesting. So I'm very grateful to have you on the show. I feel like I know everything about you. But I won't lie to you when I say that I don't know where to start with you.
Okay, let's start
Because,
at the beginning.
bro, you're a machine. You're a machine in every sense of the word. You are the definition of, and the title of your book. You are relentless, and you're not relentless in the way that you just choose to live your life, but you're relentless in every aspect of your life. When you go hard, and you go full tilt. And those are the people I like to surround myself with and have on our show. And so I'm really going to let you take it from here. So many people, you need to check out Dean's book. You get the audiobook if you don't have time to sit and read. That's what I did. And I pounded through that thing. And one thing I want to touch on before is you read your own audiobook. And I'm telling you, when you read audiobooks that are your own voice, it is a totally different experience for the listener and the person absorbing your information. So well done on you. But Dean, man, you are so fucking cool. You are SBS. You were SBS. You are this gnarly, world record breaker. You're an incredible father. You are an attentive husband. You give a shit about your community that you involve yourself in. You give yourself selflessly to charity. And not only did you do that, but you've done it and you came from a pretty hard upbringing. And I guess that's where we should start.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I was, no, I was born into a military family. My father was in the military, but both my grandparents were in the military. Yeah, my dad was a Scotsman, old school Sergeant Major Scotsman. Half my friends at school couldn't even understand him. I think they thought he was shouting all the time when actually, he was just asking me what I wanted for lunch. But he himself, his family, his parents died when he was young as well. So I think having a family for him, we were his only family really, me and my mother at the time and my two sisters. But unfortunately, my parents split up when I was the age of 8, and myself and my sisters went back to Manchester, which was my dad was in the south of England, and this is north of England. This was 1985, um, and he had a career in the military. One thing he did is put his career on hold. He got promoted to regimental sergeant major, and he decided no, he wanted to stay in the UK and try and get custody of me and my sisters, and that's what he did. 2 years later, he managed to do that. He managed to get custody of us, and we ended up living with him. Had to make a difficult decision myself at a young age. It got dragged through the courts and things like that, and the judge didn't want to separate the siblings. So, being the eldest of the three, I had to make a decision for us. At the age, by the time I was 10 at this point, it's a difficult decision because it's pretty much that decision could pan out the rest of your life. The 2 years I was in Manchester, it was I won't say it was easy. We ended up in a homeless home in we call it a ghetto called Moss Side, and Moss Side at the time was the roughest estate or ghetto in the UK. Myself and my sisters being the only Caucasians, we draw attention to ourselves, and so I found myself fighting a lot at an early age, just protecting myself and protecting my siblings. So I was starting to take shape as a character. My father, my father, as I said, got custody of us, and we moved back down south of England to a town called Aldershot, which at the time was the home of the British Army. It wasn't uncommon to see everyone in uniforms. Everyone's parents or dads or mums were serving in the military. So actually, for us, what was alien was the civilian world. We weren't used to this. We were just so used to
Yeah.
dads going away on tours, seeing lads jumping out the skies and everything else. But although I was in that environment, it was never something I thought, oh, I want to do that when I'm older.
Yeah.
Thankfully for me, my father never forced that on me either. He never had aspirations of me continuing the family tradition. It was only when I finished school, and again, talking about my dad being old school, he would not let me go out and play until I did all my homework. He was very strict, very military, even at home. And so I went to college, and we then had like free periods, and I was like, oh, I've got a free period. I wasn't used to that, and the free periods used to sort of extend to the point where I was really losing interest in my college education. As a young boy on family holidays, we used to always go to Newquay surfing. So it was now the summer when I was at college, and I decided, well, let's go down to Newquay. Newquay, back in the early 90s, was it was the Ibiza of the UK. That's where all the young sort of teenagers and young adults would go and have a good time. So, but my intentions were actually to go surfing, whereas my friends' intentions were to go out and party.
You didn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah,
Didn't want
exactly.
anything to do with it, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, I did, but I loved the water. I just saw it as an opportunity. We talk as the story progresses. I'm more natural in the water than I am on land. I'm a water baby, as my mum used to say.
Can I ask you something about your family? Because we're going to get into a lot of other things, and I don't want to trail off too hard on this, because I was thinking about this yesterday. I'm going, okay, everybody asks him, Dean tells this story. He's on all these podcasts. He's doing all this press, and I'm like, but I need to ask you some things that are maybe a little different, because that's kind of what I do here. And you're like, anything, please, different conversation, give it to me, please. Because I know at this point you must feel like you're repeating yourself just on like tape. And so when you talk about the separation with your dad and your mom, I found that really interesting, because if most people don't understand, when it comes to custody, they very rarely, if I'm not mistaken, give the father the custody over the mother. And I know this is a personal part in your life, so at any point, please let me know to, back off a bit. But I didn't hear much after you once your dad got custody and you moved down. I didn't hear very much about your mom. And you didn't really touch on that. And the reason I want to ask is because, for me, I'm a mom, and you have children. And so the idea of being separated from my son and what that would look like, I'm curious. Do you still speak with your mom? Do you have a relationship with her now?
Yeah, I do speak to my mum at the time. So when my dad got custody, like, we were probably 240 miles distance from Manchester to Aldershot. My mum didn't have much money at the time, but obviously now with the children up there, she had to rebuild her life. So she had to then set her own career. I mean, she ended up working in the prison service. She ended up being a prison officer for 20 plus years. But during that period, she didn't have much money, so she couldn't really afford to travel down to see us as much as my father was doing every weekend. So it really became probably the maximum time I would see my mum was probably twice a year at maximum. And that was probably during the summer holidays. But we sort of got, it's not because we didn't love her. It was just the way life was. My dad then met another lady, Penny, who then became almost like my stepmom. So she was, I knew I had my mum, but Penny would used to feed us, and look after, do the stuff that my dad couldn't do. But then years sort of went on, and it was just the occasional one trip a year, So I've never had Christmas with my mother since I was the age of 9.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just something I've got used to. I joined the army at 17. I went on and joined the military. When my sister, I have two sisters.
That's right.
One is a year younger than me, and the other's about 4 years younger. The middle sister, she when she was old enough, she went to live with my mum. You know, she went and moved up with my
Okay.
mum and became a prison officer as well. So she ended up building a relationship with her. But for me, once I joined the military, you know, it wasn't just yeah, it
Gone.
wasn't just my mum. It was my father as well. You probably hear from me, you know, maybe twice a year. One's Christmas and one's your birthday. But
Yeah.
my dad sort of knew that, you know, when you're in the military, you just don't disturb him. You know, he was a military man himself. You know, he knew I was busy. No, no news was good news in
Of
our family.
course.
You know, if you didn't hear from me, you know, all was good. But yeah, going back to my mother, you know, even to now, I would. She then moved over to Spain, so we would only go see her once a year, which sounds, no, it sounds difficult, but it's something I've been used to from a young age. It's not that I don't have a mum, but
Hmm.
I don't have that relationship as maybe other listeners do, that they have to see their mum every Sunday, and mum likes to cook
Hmm.
a big dinner. My mum's, you know, come from quite a rough background as well, and she, you know, it's probably where I've got my from my father.
Scrappiness from?
Yeah, from my father. Yeah, probably more from my mother than my father, actually. Yeah, so that's where the temper comes from. It's just
Yeah,
more.
but you know what? It's the motherly temper. I don't care what anybody says. When mom says something and she means it, there's a tone change,
Oh
and
yeah,
that thing is effective.
yeah. You know, my father would be in his voice. My mother would be in her look. You know,
Oh,
just the one look. Yeah, that's it. And so we do have a relationship. It's just something I've just been used to. You know, I from a young age, I didn't have that motherly figure there, and I've sort of
yeah.
got on with life. And then I joined the military. And like I said, when I joined the military, it wasn't just my mum, my sisters, or my dad. You know, that was my new family. You know, that was something I enjoyed so much. Even when you had summer leave, I still wouldn't go home. I'd just be off with a lad somewhere.
See, that's where I think our similarities come in. I had that experience at a young age as well. I left when I was 17, joined the military when I was 18. And it's not that you don't, my parents, it's funny because now they're like, I get it. You're busy. And I was like,
Yeah,
yeah, I was blowing things apart. You don't
yeah,
understand. There's no time to like, hey mom, how's shopping today? It's like it's not that I just don't even have time. It's to be completely fair and honest. I didn't really give a shit.
yeah. No,
Like, what am
I
I
think it's a
supposed to
bit.
talk about with you?
You know, in reflection, you know, when I'm older, I probably think I was a little bit selfish and think, but it's a work hard, play hard environment. So you've worked hard. You then don't want to be going on your, no, just sat down with your mum having a cup of tea over, you know, what I mean, you want to be out with the lads and sort of letting your hair down if you had any hair at the time. But
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But that is no. So
same.
your answer to your question, we still have a relationship, but it's
Good.
we don't feel like we have to call
You're
each other
there.
every weekend.
She
You're there.
knows you're there. You
Yeah,
guys are a part of the family. You
yeah.
communicate when you communicate. I guess the reason I wanted to bring that up is because that's one thing I didn't see much of. And I wasn't sure if there was a falling out, and not that it's any of my business,
Yeah.
but it's always something I'm interested in the family dynamic. And that comes back to me for, mental health and how we raise our children and what that, helps them develop into. And so I wasn't sure if there was like a part of you, where, because I did, when I was reading and I was listening, I totally understood, like, you guys came from when you lived with your mom, you guys came from pretty much nothing.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't sure if there was a riff within that, because you did choose, going back to, where you were, sorry, where I totally rudely interrupted you, but I will continue to do, where you were got custody given to your dad, and you were the one that made that decision on behalf of your sisters. I mean, I didn't
Yeah.
know if there was a resentment there or anything like that.
My middle sister, I won't lie, that we've sometimes clashed before, and that discussion has been brought up. And then, over a few drinks with my mum in Spain, you sort of talk about, hindsight, and it's like, well, so the way I saw it, that us leaving gave her an opportunity to have a career.
Rebuild.
But then she always said, well, no, even if you were there, I still would have done it anyway. So you
Uh-huh.
just don't know. It's just the way it was panned out. But one thing that I took from my mother, actually, when I did join the military, she was the one who highlighted to me that I was following on my dad's path. And it was like, no, you take your own path. So I'll always thank her for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's beautiful. Sorry, I find it fascinating when you find out when you're talking with someone and you talk to somebody with such excellent caliber as you, and to hear that it's not like you came from some private school where you were spoon fed, because honestly, I feel like if you did, you would have been soft as hell. And, I heard when you were talking, there was a point where you got soft, and then I laughed a little bit because I know when that happened to me, I can almost pinpoint the day where I got out and I was like, oh, I'm soft. Oh, I'm so soft. This is embarrassing. I can't be around myself right now. So I totally, it resonated with me in that sense. So I wanted to bring that up, but yes, please go ahead. So you left, you went to college, you decided you were going to go surf instead, which was fun.
Yeah. And then my father would, this was 1994, long before we had any sort of technology, community. And, my father, I'd met a guy in the water, a guy called Jan, who was surfing in the day, and then he was working in the evenings and breakfast, just a silver service waiter. And, he said, I get £30 a day, £10 to pay for my hostel. I get fed twice a day and I get £20. And I thought, brilliant, that's good money when you're 17. Yeah, I'll do that. So I sort of did that. I started working with him, and then my dad came down to pick me and my friends up, but I just didn't want to get into an altercation with my father because I knew he'd win. He'd win me over, and I'd
fold you like a piece of clothing with you in it.
Yeah. He'd have me in the boot. You know what I mean? So I just didn't get into that situation. So my friends went back, and my dad's like, "Well, where is he?" And he's like, "He's in Newquay somewhere." So 6 months later had passed, and my father then came back looking for me and found me in a surf shop, working away. And again, that I'm very respectful of my father. I've never swore in front of my father. I don't like to get into arguments. And I could see, it wasn't the disappointment, but it was like, I know he didn't have an education, and you always want the best for your children. I think me being the eldest, he wanted me to go to college and then to go to university and things like that. But I didn't. And so you could see not the disappointment, but almost like, well, what are you going to do now? And to silence him, I said, well, I'll join the military. At the time, I was 65 kilos and about 5'7". So I could see, I now understand his response, which was, you would last 2 minutes. Again, we talk about where I am now. And from then, did he mean those words, or were they just clever words to motivate me? You just don't know.
Sorry, I keep talking over you, but I think your dad was, I feel like your dad is not a dumb man by even like the long stretch here. So I feel like there was part of him that knew you enough to know that if I could just catch his attention with a comment like that, that might have been enough to get your ass into gear.
Yeah,
I feel like.
I think so, because we were quite competitive. I liked sport, and he knew I liked sport, and I wonder whether that was I'll drop that one in and see what happens. But the fact that I still talk about it now, 24 years later, is people say to me, what would you say to your son? And I understand words are quite powerful. I probably wouldn't use those words. I'd probably do it in another manner. But that's what he did. And, he said that, and I thought, well, there's no point in getting into an argument. We'll go back home. And my father, he was still in Aldershot, which was home of the British Army. So the careers office was only 400 meters from his office. So I walked in on the Monday morning, and I don't know if it's the same with your careers office, but you tend to go in with ideas of what you want to join, and then the recruiters are from different backgrounds, and they will always try and poach you to their unit.
Yeah, ours is a little, it's similar in that sense, but I remember because I did exactly what you did. I went to college, and then within like 2 months, like I actually went to try out for the football team, and I made it halfway through. And then they're like, you need to work on some of your technical skills. I was like, okay, well, this is why I'm here. So if this isn't going to work out, I'm not really the partying type. And then I was like, I'm going to join the military. And I walked into the recruiting office, and I walked right up to the first person there, and I said, I want to join the Army. And I don't come from a military family. I said, I want to join the Army. And they're like, okay, here's everything. We didn't get the conversation of like, go Air Force, go Army, go Navy kind of situation. There wasn't any of that. It was, This was in 2007, like the end of 2007. So this is when we switched over from NATO forces, from peacekeeping in Afghanistan as Canada to NATO ISAF. So they're like, we don't care really what you want. We are dagging this one red, and this one red. Pick one.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Yeah. Well, I didn't really have much of an idea about the military. I'd known, seen what my friends' dads were in as well. But in Aldershot, which is the home of the British Army, which is very airborne heavy, I'd never even heard of the Royal Marines or the Special Boat Service or even the Royal Navy, really. So I didn't really go in there with an idea or any sort of knowledge of what the military was and who sat where and who did what. So that's obviously why the person in there was join the parachute regiment. Now that
perfect.
Exactly. I thought, again, that sounds good. He sold that to me. At 17, you're quite vulnerable. Where do I sign? So I did. I came out. Went to my father's office. I said, I'm joining the parachute regiment. He's like, you're bloody not. And he just marched me straight back in. But it was only then that he then made me aware about you can go airborne engineers, commando engineers. He was thinking short term. He thought, I'll probably only be in for 3 years. Get as much as you can from that experience. I always wanted to be a fireman. That was my plan. So I thought, well, if I get 3 years in the military, get that done, then it'd be great to add to my CV.
Like a stepping stone almost.
Yeah, stepping stone to the fire brigade. So that's where my head was at the time. And then you then go choose what trade you want to do. And then, I then passed all them. I had the option to choose whatever. And, I was sort of thinking with my penis, I thought, bomb disposal sounds sexy. The women will love that. This is long before.
If you're alive.
Yeah. That was long before. There wasn't really any threats over Northern Ireland, I think, at the time. Or diffusing old World War II bombs found in the countryside,
With a bayonet, you don't feel like just lying on your belly poking at things to see what happens next?
Yeah, exactly. And my dad's like, no, you're not. And he then told me about the trades and things like that. So he was quite instrumental in the early stages about what cap badge to go and then what trade. He was thinking what I could get as an individual from the military rather than what I pretty much that.
And your dad, and you mentioned this at the beginning of the book, your dad, you explained that he was always in like tracksuits and he was a footballer. So how does that work? What do you mean? Explain that to me, because I'm assuming it means he's more on the sports side. So in Canada, we have a thing called CISM, which is like military Olympics teams kind of situation. Okay. So you're an athlete for the military.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, what it used to be in the military is you got those who play professional sport, as in the civilian sector, and it's normally the ones who didn't tend to make that grade. They wanted to join the military, but within the military, you have sport. You can play for the army, you can play for the navy, you can play for the air force. But also, while you're in the military, for example, I'll give you an example. Nigel Benn, who's a very famous boxer. He boxed when he was in the military. Kelly Holmes, who's won numerous gold medals. She was in the military. Chris Akabusi. So the military was almost a platform for them that they could. We call it almost like being semi-professional. Is the fact that you utilize the military's facilities and things like that, but you tended to find that was you. If you were very good at sport, I joined up with a friend of mine, Frank Green. And he was an excellent rugby player. And I saw him you see him now 22 years later, and his career has just been rugby. They do that. So, and then there's been, when I was playing football in Germany, with the teams there was guys who were being scouted by professional football teams, and they would get bought out by the military. So it was almost a platform. If you hadn't made it the first time, that you could do it through the military.
Round two, let's try this again. When you got some money and some support, let's try again.
Exactly. In the military, we used to have a thing in the military. It's called Sports Afternoon every Wednesday. So units would play sports against each other. You have the Army Cup, so you'd obviously have to play other teams to get there. The boxing. There's so much. Obviously, this was this was more pre 9/11. I think once
Of
9/11,
course.
the operational tempo took over, but this was more when it was going on exercises around the world and peacekeeping and things like that. We had the
Mm-hmm.
capability to then have sports afternoons and things like that, So we our sergeant
Okay.
major, when I got to 5/9 Commando, he wouldn't let us do sport unless it was a recognised sport. So we set up our own surfing team.
What does that
Yeah.
mean?
So we had a surfing team, so we could go surfing on Wednesday afternoon. Yeah.
So it could be it had to be a recognized sport, but you guys counted surfing as a recognized sport?
Yeah, we did. We just set up our own team, and sent one of the guys on a lifeguard course, and actually, I think at the time the RAF were the Royal Air Force were the
Yeah.
tri-service surfing champions. So it was a sport, but that's obviously because they throw their surfboards on the aircraft when they fly around the world.
I feel I feel like I'm part of the Commonwealth here, and I haven't got to hear any of this cool shit. Like, it has not made it across the pond to our military, and I feel like I'm being really left out here all of a sudden. This is very unfortunate, but I'm excited for you because it sounds like you had a well-rounded way of looking at things, that, your dad was military, but he had that side of him that he realized that, it wasn't the end all be all. There was a lot of things you could do within that. And he didn't just say, okay, you're going to jump out of planes and that's you for life now. Go your knees.
Yeah, there is. There's so many takeaways from the military and skill sets you develop that you didn't think. You get lots of qualifications within the military. As in military qualifications, you get so many civilian qualifications. I'm very fortunate. I'm a yacht master. I'm a dive master. I'm a ski instructor. Stuff that people would spend years trying to do, and you just get it whilst being in the military.
And spend so much money trying to get it as well. You got to
exactly.
you got to get a certified person. You got to
You
pay for all the equipment.
And that's the great thing about the military, is they have access to all those facilities and all that equipment, which, you know what I mean? Yes, your wages aren't great while you're in the military, but what what you could be paying for is very different.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense, though. So your dad, you said he was a footballer?
He was a footballer. Yeah. He was the Army football manager, coach, and player. So growing up, before I joined the military, the last few years, I would see him just out with the Army football team, just playing football all the time. So, as we said, a tracksuit soldier. But because when I then joined the military, I'd finished my basic training, and someone recognised my surname, because Stott's not quite. It's not a Smith or a Brown or things like that. So he knows that. Oh, you're not Davy Stott's boy, and I was like, oh yeah, I am. He's like, right, great footballer. And my first posting was to Germany, which is the Army football champions in there, and it was literally probably because of my surname, rather.
I was just gonna say
skill sets. So that's what I did, and I went over to Germany and found myself working in the gym. I was a PTI. Quite young, actually. My sergeant major at the time knew that I would just be playing football, so he had to satisfy his regimental staffing list that, all right, I need to put someone in the gym, so you go do that. So yeah, within a couple of months of being there, I was back to UK on my PTI course, which was good. It was my first badge.
Your first cap badge. How long is your basic training over there?
So our training differs on cap badges. So we, the Royal Engineers, you would do 10 weeks basic training, which just takes you from a civilian to be able to polish your boots and fire a weapon in the right direction. And then you have
try to.
Yeah, or try to, yeah. And then you have continuation training within the Royal Engineers, which is 14 weeks, which is all your combat engineering, from water supply, chainsaws to demolitions. At the time, there was booby traps because it was pre-Diana. So all bridge building, you do it all within that 14 weeks. And then if you need to get a driving license, you go do your driving course. And then if you then doing your trade course, so our trade courses in the engineers range from 6 months to 18 months. So from a Royal Engineer coming in, yeah, but I didn't do my trade course straight away. I went straight out to Germany. If your trade, there's not a slot, then you wait for a future date. So it can be quite extensive depending on what cap badge. If you join the Royal Marines, you go from a civilian to a Royal Marine in 9 months. So it varies. It varies.
I know I had my actual very first guest on the show was a Royal Marine.
Oh yeah, who's that?
And I can't say his last name. He won't let me say his last name. His name's James, but I'll send you afterward because he lives here now. He
Oh
married
really?
a Canadian. Yeah. He married a Canadian, which is really funny. And I actually met him because his wife was my server at a restaurant. We got shooting the shit, and she's like, "You're in the military?" And then I found out he was on the same operation that we were both on the same op that we both got messed up on. And so it was an interesting conversation talking to a Royal Marine because I hadn't had any clue as to the levels that the British military had for special operators. I thought it was very much similar to the same as Canada with the JTF, the CSOR, and there's no similarity at all in you guys.
Yeah, different tiers, and there's all sorts.
Yeah.
No, it is, true.
So you saw the tiers, and you're like, I'm a fuck right to the top. You're not going to hang around, be normal.
No, I didn't see that at first. After a year playing football in Germany, I enjoyed going to Germany actually, because Germany's now shut down for the UK forces. They're all on UK. So at the time, there was advantages of being in Germany. You got more money for being there. Technology was cheap, cars were cheap, and everything else, and beer was cheap. You know what I mean? So I enjoyed my time there, but I could see myself following my father's footsteps, and that's where I said, my mother said, look, there's alternative options. And so at this point, I'd grown as an individual. I'd sort of developed. I wasn't now 65 kilos. I was probably more about 80 kilos.
Okay.
And things like that. So I was becoming more confident in myself and my abilities. And I looked at the All Arms Commando course, and that's what I did. I then went over to UK and started that process. Obviously, there was a bit of a blip in between that. I got into an altercation in Germany before I went over, fighting some Fusiliers, and that subsequently I ended up spending some time in Colchester prison after I'd finished my commando course. So
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, I haven't quite.
Okay, because I don't know how it works over there in terms of that, but I know, I mean, the severity of what it would take for a Canadian to be put in somewhere like Colchester is not as little as a fight. I mean, my God, they would do, few hour crick chesses for 48 hours where you're changing every hour and you're marching everywhere. But I mean, to put somebody into an actual military prison system, why was it just one fight? Were they trying to acknowledge that drinking was an issue and they were taking it very seriously, or it just feels like a disproportionate result for a little thing?
Yeah, no, we have what you've just touched on there. It's called ROPS, restriction of privileges, where, like you said, you get change. Yeah, we have that. No, I think it's because it actually, the guys ended up in hospital. It was three serious assaults, on these guys.
So you didn't just punch them?
No, it wasn't like a punch, and but I think going back slightly, these guys were there on a assault pioneer course, which is an engineering course which they train the infantry. They'd already been in trouble numerous times downtown, so they weren't allowed to go downtown. So they had to stay on camp. And then one of the squadrons had just come back from Northern Ireland, and they decided to have a family party in the camp bar, which obviously then, alongside these infantry lads, it just then starts turning into a bit of trouble. But they were actually being very rude to some of the wives, and not even like trying to hide it. It was quite vocal. So me and my friend just swept the floor with them. And my sergeant major was great. He said, look, you lads just go to bed, sleep on it, which I did. But then unfortunately about an hour later, big knock on the door, and it was the military police. So from our side, we were happy to let it go. From their side, their troop sergeant was like, well, I've got guys here, with black eyes, cuts and bruises, couple in hospital. he wasn't happy. So
did they have to go as well to Colchester? I mean, if they're the ones that instigated it. Oh.
yeah, no. So what had happened is when I went over to UK to do my it's called a beat up. So before we start the commander course, the unit runs their own in-house, they call it a beat up. So basically they get you ready physically and mentally and admin wise, your kit prepared before you go on the all arms commander course. It's actually harder than the commander course itself. So on week 2 of that, we're up in Wales, running up and down the mountains, and the one instructor said, you've got to go back to Germany. They're doing an ID parade. This thing was ramping up quite quick. I thought at least a few months before this lands on my desk, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
Went back, had an ID parade. So those who were involved were the unit, and then myself and a good friend of mine. His brother was in the same squadron, and they didn't pick him out. I was like, all right. So they didn't pick him out. My ears were still sticking out.
It's your ears.
Yeah. But I was also the PTI. I was the unit PTI. So I'd taken these guys for physical training. So they knew who I was straight away. So I got picked out. My mate didn't, and I kept quiet. But everyone within the unit knew these guys were at fault and it wasn't us, So I didn't get any sort of real punishments. Everyone from the commanding officer down knew that these guys were wrong, and they also knew that I hadn't spoken out about my friend. I could have done that, but what's the point in that?
Ratted them out. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you would have had a buddy.
Yeah, well, snitches get stitches, as they say when you go to school.
Oh, that counts over there too, huh?
Yeah. So I got a lot of respect for not doing that. And yeah, unfortunately, these guys who should have gone as well didn't. They did just walked into the wrong bar with the wrong guys. That's all it was. But actually, when I went to Colchester Prison, you go in there. So Colchester Prison has a variety of people there. They also actually have young offenders, as in from civilian sector, in there as well.
Wow.
Yeah, they have a unit with the young offenders. They have 28 days and under. So 28. So you could go to Colchester Prison for AWOL, guys, maybe drugs as well. There's all sorts of people, and all the way up to like serious assault, fraud as well. Putting the wrong mileage on your claim forms. That was a big one.
Wow.
That was bigger than any sort of assault or anything else. Was actually fraudulent against the military. I remember
because you're paid so poorly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We'll increase the pay, and we'll have less people in Colchester.
Right.
But for me, in the this was '97. You go in there. The instructors are all guardsmen, and they know who's who. They know those who don't want to be in the military. And those that literally just got caught out. And that's what they said. They said you just got caught. That was it. So
that's it.
So thankfully for me, it was very early in my career. I finished my commando course, went to Colchester Prison. When I finished there, it's amazing about Colchester, the fact that you have a room inspection on a Monday by the officer commanding. And whoever gets the best room gets the radio for the week. And it's amazing what morale a radio, 2 hours of radio in the evening does for you. So, and that's your incentive when you're in there. But for me, I learned a lot of lessons in there. I enjoyed it. I just took as much as I could from that experience, military-wise, and made sure I didn't do it again. And unfortunately, there's people who go to Colchester later on in their career, and it has more of an impact on their career. At that time of life, it didn't really. I was still young enough that it wasn't. I didn't lose any rank or anything like that. So.
How old were you when you were there?
So I was 20 when I was.
Oh, so you were still fairly young, and you didn't have You didn't have massive, massive loss to have happen here. Because I know the rank systems, I know when it comes to like, if you really mess up, you were actually the first person that I'd ever read about or heard about going to a military prison for something like that. I mean, I've only ever heard of like, they'll be deranked, they'll go down a rank, and then, there's ramifications within that, but I've never actually heard of someone going and being taken somewhere, especially for something like that. But I guess using you as an example, I mean, you're already recognizable enough to the rest of your people. They're like, hey, well, this is what's going to happen to you. It makes a lot of sense. I can understand that.
Yeah.
I can understand that. So
yeah, but I came back from that, and I just joined 5/9 Commando, and thankfully for me, the admin officer, he looked at my report, and he was old school as well. He'd been in trouble when he just didn't get caught, and he just ripped up my report, and he said, fresh start, and that for me was perfect. Draw a line in the sand. I always say, who would you rather step off the back of the helicopter with? Someone who can polish his boots and see his face, or someone who's obviously got a bit of history? So,
I can agree with you on that on so many levels.
Yeah.
On so many levels. So you did all of this, and once you finished there, what kind of happens? Is there, like you said, that he ripped up the paperwork, but was there an actual mark on your record? Did you ever find out if that had any sort of ramifications?
Yeah, we have a medal in the UK. It's called Long Service Good Conduct. So basically, you have to have 15 years of exemplary military. So no restriction of privileges, no charges and things like that. And after 15 years, you get your long service good conduct. So what that meant is I would have had to start my 15 years from that. I didn't get my LSGC, but no, I'm not too worried about that.
Woo. I would rather, like you said, I would rather come out with stories than I would come out with another medal to pin onto my jacket.
But we used to joke when you used to see like characters who were clearly got in trouble. Got their LSGC, and that used to shake your head at them as that.
Buddy, you just haven't been caught. You just were not caught.
And that's all it was. Not everyone was doing it, but at the time, when you're in the military environment, you've got a lot of testosterone, and then you start mixing units together. It's naturally there's going to be issues and altercations. It's just those that have character, big ears or tattoos,
character?
Or things that are going to stand out. Yes. Recognizable features, problem. Basically. That's my problem. It wasn't anything else.
Well, I mean, I feel like you're not the standard for a special operator. I think when you kind of got into your book a little bit more, but for people who are kind of listening to this, the more standard operator is that 6 foot tall, just huge looking kind of scary dude. But that's not actually the case. I've worked with special operators from the British military, and half of them are not too much taller than me, and I'm 5 foot, but my God, can they just move?
Yeah, that's it. It's unassuming. Everyone has this perception of, as you said, 6'4" and breathes fire, and it's like, oh no, it's not. That's just unfortunate. It's the way the TV and the movies have their perception on special forces. We tended to find it in the UK military, especially like the Royal Marine Commandos and the Commandos. They tended to be a bit stockier, bigger lads, because they used to carry on their courses. They carry more weight. They don't go as fast, but they're used to carrying weight. Whereas the paras, the airborne lads, would carry less weight but a lot quicker. So they're a little bit shorter and
the shorter guys.
Simple. Yeah. So you see, when you went on selection, you'd see all shapes and sizes. It's very interesting on day one to say, right, because you make your own assessments of that, but then 6 months later, and there's like a handful of you, and you're like, I would not have picked half of these on day one.
You were supposed to be gone day one. You looked like you couldn't run to save your life.
Oh yeah. And like you say, that's where we get on it later. It's 80% mental, 20 physical. Yeah.
All day long. It's no different.
Yeah.
That's the terrifying part. That's why I find you so fascinating. Is you don't have the typical. You don't have that look where I'd be like, he will fuck me up before I move. Like there's no, like you don't have that. And I think that's what makes you so unique and so receptive to the general public is you don't really have that. Like I've straight up murdered so many people. You have this, like, I'm a father, I'm I'm a soft looking gentleman. I'm not a, you just don't have that about you. And I think that's what's allowed part of you to maybe transition really well into civilian life is you just don't look horrific. And I think that's a compliment if you're going to take it that way.
Yeah, I think I can dress up and dress down accordingly to that.
That would have been a better way to say it.
Yeah. I know I have sleeves, of tattoos.
Yes.
As you said, when I'm working in the civilian sector, I know when to sort of cover them. I don't have a swallows on the inside of my thumb or a teardrop on my eye.
Don't you judge my hand tattoos. You don't have the face, you don't have the face tattoos to go along with the badassness of yourself.
No,
that's all right. We'll get you there. We'll get you there. Don't worry about it. We got you. So tell me some more. So you do this, you get a Colchester, and then you decide you're going to go on course. How does this work? What's this look like?
So I would have already done. I just finished the commando course, and the squadron were in Northern Ireland at the time, and the admin officer was like, right, you guys are going across the water. And I thought, brilliant, I'm on my first tour to Ireland. And then obviously I went to Colchester prison. So when I came back, the rest of the guys were still in Northern Ireland. So we call it rear party. There's those that are on tour and there's those back in the unit. So I was on rear party at the time. And so I took advantage of that. I managed to get on my my diving aptitude course, which...
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, there would have been a big waiting list because the guys, this was the course where you can get more money. It's very physically heavy course. So naturally the airborne lads and the commando lads like to do that. So I very quickly got my name on that course and came back from that. And then obviously for me, I'd not yet met anyone within this unit, and they all then came back from Northern Ireland, and it's the whole welcome back party, and you could see people. There's rumours the guys are, wait till such and such sees, like they're almost like the unit bullies. I thought, here we go, but it was no.
There's always some of them.
Yeah, exactly. But it was no different from being in the playground in Moss Side in Manchester or Aldershot or back in the bar in Germany. I held my own, and I think that's all they wanted to see. That's the problem with bullies. If you hit back, then they didn't expect that. But then I found myself on the boxing team. I obviously ticked all the credentials that they were looking for. And the unit were the Army Minor Units boxing champions. So each year they would win. They automatically went through to the final. They didn't have to fight anyone off. So from the January through to the March, we would train solidly for 3 months.
So I get that you used to like fight in school. I get that. Like I understand like protecting your siblings. I respect the hell out of that. But then from what I heard, there wasn't really any boxing in your life. So they just figured you hit people and you were good at it?
I had done a little bit of boxing in Guildford when I was growing up. My friend Christian at school wanted to do some, so I went with him. And my father was actually against it, but I always said, look, when I lose, then I'll stop. Luckily I never lost. I only had about 4 fights, so I had a little bit of a boxing skill. But actually, when I joined the unit, it was there's not really. Yes, we learned how to box and things like that, but it was pure aggression and physical. And that's what it is. Probably the fittest time I've been. And it's just, there's no elegance. There's no butterflies. No sting like a bee. Yeah. And butterflies. It wasn't. It was just full on. Kill the opponent in front of you.
I was just going to say you have to win, because if you lost, how embarrassing would that have been for you?
Well, that was it. And this was my first opportunity in front of the unit. And obviously you've got the guys that are from the unit and guys that have been posted out to training regiments and everything else, all coming back to this big event. And it's all mess dressed. You have the buglers from the Royal Marines.
I'm picturing all of this in my head right now.
So here's my opportunity to sort of shine in front of the unit. And there's 7 fights on the evening. And we should have, from our track record, should have been well ahead by the interval. The interval was after the 4th fight, and it was 2-2. going into the second half. And I remember the sergeant major, a good friend of mine actually now, Mark Wilson, and he came in and he was livid. He wasn't livid with the boxers. He was just like, someone needs to silence these lot out there, because the crowd, the opposition crowd, they actually, a bit optimistic.
Got a little ballsy.
Oh yeah,
they're like, we could actually win this.
Yeah, so he came in, and it was, into the chest to me, this is your opportunity to shine, and I'm like, but for me, so I'm like, the adrenaline's going as well, and then I remember the doors opening, and all I could hear was I had my own music going on in the background, but he had the buglers, and I think there was tears running down my eye just purely because of the adrenaline, and I went in, and I was fighting at middleweight then, so I was 75 kilos, but I managed to keep the size of my arms. I'd lost it all around my waist and had quite big legs. And someone said when the other lad took his gown off, he looked half the size, and they're like, oof. But yeah,
this is gonna hurt.
1 minute 30, and I knocked him down 3 times. That was it. It was done. I mean, I think we then won the other 2 fights. It worked out 5-2 in the end, but I always remember that. And a lot of people, I think for me, that was me making my mark within the unit, and that helped me later on. Anyway.
My God, if you would have lost, the hell you would have had to pay.
Exactly. Hindsight's a great thing, so it'd be a totally different story.
Oh my God, I bet you that could have literally been the catalyst to a change point for you, because I feel like if there was no respect for you, there would have been no courses for you, there would have been no giving to you, and so I can understand why that had a lot of weight on it. Yeah, so after the win, you go back to this unit, and they love you now all of a sudden.
Yeah. So I joined the unit. I was in a troop called Condor Troupe, and this was in where are we now? So 97. This is probably 98. We just come back from 98. We just come back from Norway. We had the boxing, and then we were then in the Mediterranean on the ship out to Spain, Portugal, and France. I think that later on that year we went to the Caribbean. We were out in Belize. And there was a big hurricane actually that year. There was a big hurricane called Hurricane Mitch, which totally destroyed Cancun and everything else. And we were supposed to be going Cancun. So we got pulled out the jungle. Everyone was like, and saw the Royal Marines all heading off to Cancun. And we were sat in the bar in the NAFI at the camp in Belize. And I always say, the people with all the information are the cleaners, always the cleaners or the staff. And our troop staff sergeant was away or whatever, and this cleaner came upstairs and she goes, "Oh, you guys the engineers?" I'm like, yeah. She goes, "Oh, you guys are going on ship tonight." I'm like, "Well, no, we're off to Cancun." And literally
like,
2 minutes later,
no.
She goes, no. 2 minutes later, our boss came in. Is that right, lads? We're not going to Cancun. So the cleaners know more information than us, and we did. We ended up getting aboard a vessel and heading down to Honduras and Nicaragua and doing hurricane relief in Honduras and Nicaragua. So it was quite a busy year really for us. It was a good year. Not so much soldiering wise, but more combat engineering for me. So that year alone, I managed to get Arctic trained, jungle trained, and everything else. So that was a good start for me there. But when I was in Norway, we have a troop within 5'9" Commando called Recce Troop. It's a standalone troop, which it's like an elite troop within the unit, and they work with Brigade Recce Force from 3 Commander Brigades. So with the Royal Marine snipers, the mountain leaders, the forward operated gunners from 2-9 Commando, and we have the engineer capabilities there. So you have to be selected to go Recce Troop. They have their own sort of in-house selection. So I'd been spotted from my time in Norway, and my name had gone.
Or your ears.
Probably spotted for my ears, yeah, or in the boxing ring, one of the two.
One of them.
Yeah, one of them. But I think it's more on the characters. They're like, because we've all got the same sort of skill sets. And so very quickly, I then moved to Recce Troop, which for me was great because, I then got my para wings as well, being within that unit. So already my career has gone from being in Germany as a tracksuit soldier to joining the commandos, to then going to the Recce Troop, and then, you know, other than that, is you're only one step below the UK Special Forces, but you're sort of funneling in that direction.
And in this time frame, so from the time you were at Colchester to now, how long had that been?
So Colchester was 2007. Sorry, 2007, 97. This was 98 or January 99. January 99 it was, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow. So my God, you had a quick turnaround for everything.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I had a really quick, that's what I mean. I any sort of lull as well in my career. I always wanted something to look forward to, you know. So when I used to come back from exercises, I used to go to the Clarks and just see what courses I could do. You know, I was so keen to do courses. You know, someone used to nickname me the course, you know, because I was always on courses. But for me, you know, it's just to get that experience. You know, I always say that you can't be experienced without experiences. And I don't like, as you know, I don't like to be bored. I don't have to have a lull.
No,
I don't feel like I'm wasting time. You know, it's like, well, what can I train for next? And that's what I did. I was just going on courses after course, you know, then did my diving course, your advanced diving courses. So during this period, you're also going away, getting these additional qualifications as well.
So when all this is kind of happening, and this is, you know, like you said, you guys were doing all of this work and you were doing all this hurricane relief and things like that. Where does this incredible wife kick in? How did you meet her?
Oh, this is later on. This is when I was in the Special Forces. Yeah. So.
Okay. So we'll wait on that. So run me through.
Yeah, that's later on. Yeah. I did have a wife before that. You know, I won't lie. I've been married before.
Oh, you're one of those guys. You're like the Rangers are. It's the Ranger starter pack. You get the Ranger panties, you get a DUI, and you have one divorce.
Yeah, lucky I've never had a DUI. But yeah, no, I've had two previous ones. I always say I have more baggage. Yeah, I have more baggage than Terminal 5 at the airport. Yeah, but I needed to go through those. That's what I say. You can't be experienced about experiences. I needed to go through those. You know,
got to be married a few times.
Got to be married a few times. And to be honest, when we talk about Alana, you know, those early ones with my wives, they weren't as receptive to my time in the military. It was almost like they didn't want me in the military. And that was the difference. You know, I love my time in the military as well. So I didn't, you know, had the sort of those distractions.
Yeah. But no, it's there's nothing wrong with talking, but here's the thing. Every single special operator I know has at least one under their belt.
Well, yeah. I think US Special Forces, I think it's 90%.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the job or, you know, because it's very selfish for you when you're in the military to expect someone to be there waiting all the time. You know, it takes a certain individual to do that. And I have respect for the wives that do that.
Yeah, for sure. But I do know that I had some conversations with some of those guys recently when I was down in the States in January, and I remember them talking about it so nonchalant. They're like, no. Like, you have to marry a stripper at one point. Like, it's part of what happens when you're a special operator. Like, you got to if you don't get the DUI, you got to marry a stripper, and then you got to divorce her within the 6-month period. Then you got to find another stripper that's fallen in love with you. And then your mates tell you that, no, she doesn't love you, but you still don't listen. So you don't quite get married, but you get close to it. But I feel like that's part of this. In the military community, you get this idea that, you know, the women and the wives will be there when you get back. But in all reality, and for most of the listeners who don't know this, if you've ever deployed, most of the guys that I've ever deployed alongside, they're either divorced by the time the deployment's over, or they're on their way to it, or their bank accounts are emptied halfway through the tour and they come home and have to sort that out. And that's not exaggeration. That's just all reality.
Yeah, no, yeah. It sounds like a scene out of The Hangover.
Yeah. Most of these people I know, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. They're like, you've never been divorced? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No, no, no,
It's,
no, man.
it's commonplace, with
Oh,
a
for
lot of
sure.
guys, and that's why I always have respect for those that haven't, because some of the wives do get it, but it's difficult for them to expect to have put their lives on hold, look after their kids while
Of course.
work hard, play hard as well, and I think their perception as well, especially when you're flying around the world and things like that, they think it's a lad's holiday, and it's like, it's far from it. It's
Yeah,
far
it's
from
so fun climbing
it.
mountains with 100 pounds on your back. It feels like the ideal thing to do on a Sunday,
Yeah, exactly.
something along those lines. So then okay, so carry on then. Carry
Yeah,
on.
so I joined Recce Troop, and we went out to Kosovo. We did a tour of Kosovo, which was the first operational tour for Recce Troop since the Falklands War. So this is
Oh,
from
wow.
1982 now through to end of '99. So that was great for us. I mean, that's when we started seeing the tempo change in operations within the UK forces. I then was very fortunate to be asked to go back as an instructor on the commando course as a young as a lance corporal. They promoted me to corporal for this, and I remember my commando course being physically hard, but mentally hard as well, because we didn't learn anything. It was about how cold could you be, how long could you be in that position, with we weren't even allowed to wear Gore-Tex. It was all about fitness. There was I took nothing away from that course, as in soldiering wise. Everything I learned soldiering was when I joined my unit. So when I went back as an instructor, like 4 years later, I thought it was the same. I thought the students were setting up our tents, we will be stood on the side and things like that. And it wasn't. It was totally the opposite, which was great. It was lessons learned. And they probably realised that, probably because of the operational tempo was now starting to go. Now these guys were actually going on operations, not just going on an exercise to the Caribbean or the Mediterranean. But what I took from my time on my course is I learned nothing. I didn't really have any respect for any of my instructors, because, for me, they just gave me a hard time for no reason. And I didn't see
Screaming at you.
Yeah, screaming at you. And so I didn't want that from my students, because I knew I was going to be working alongside these guys potentially if they passed. And we still had a couple of the instructors who were like that, who thought, the standard procedure was to come out, scream and shout and curse at them and get them in a press up position for no reason. But you could see their reaction. There wasn't. So I was very much, I'm a sociable character, so I like to sort of joke with them and things like that. But if they did mess up, then I would come down hard on them. But you noticed the disappointment in their faces. It almost felt like they'd let you down as well.
Totally different.
Yeah, totally different. I was getting more from them. I remember one of the students saying that of all the instructors, I was the most intimidating. I said, why? And they said, we just couldn't read you. We just couldn't read you. Like this smiling assassin.
You're the quiet guy.
Yeah, the quiet guy. But then when it went wrong, it went Pete Tong. And they suffered. But so I took a lot of things away from that. I'd never ask of my students or something that I couldn't do myself. And I'd seen it before where they're asking stupid things of them. And I was like, well, you stand there, you do that with them. And so I would always do it with them. Before we'd ask them to do anything, I would do a demonstration as well. So you've got their respect as well.
I think the time that you just whipped it out and attached carabiners to your penis was enough of a respect aspect. I feel like.
Oh yeah. No, but that's why I say we had a good sense of humor with them. There's so many, because it's a hard enough course for them anyway. So they just don't. They want to go away from there thinking, I actually learned something. I enjoyed myself, and everything else. I always remember because we used to have students from the army, students from the navy. But we also used to have international students as well. So I remember taking the US Marine Corps gunny sergeant. We had 2 guys from Ukraine. We had Lebanese officers. We had all sorts of characters on there. So some of them had never seen a ration box before, or like the MRE, what you call an MRE.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So because obviously from their units they'd never seen that, And when you're dealing with naval dentists and doctors, they've probably never seen it either, you know, so they wouldn't know what it was. So we used to really have fun with them. I remember like opening the box, and we'd tape the bottom of, you know, the sides to the table, and then we cut like a mat around it, which draped over the front. And then you'd have a, you know, you'd fully open it, and, you know, you'd have one of the instructors underneath, and he's like pushing a baguette through there and like a bottle of wine, and you sort of talk, you know, so you had a bit of fun with them. So again, as you touched on with that was the wet and dry drills, which they don't like, is that you have to get fully soaked and then get into your dry kit. And what we're trying to explain to them then is when you are on patrols and things like that and do get wet, when you get an opportunity to sleep, you don't sleep in your wet clothes. You need to get into your dry clothes and things like that. So you know, I had there was a couple of females on the course, and it's sort of like, you know, I said, right, excuse me, Mummy, you easily offended.
Yeah.
Oh no, Corporal, I've seen it before. Okay, so I just pulled my pants down. As you mentioned, I had a Prince Albert on there, and I just stuck a load of diving weights on it. So
oh no,
yeah, it was probably about as thin as my pen, but it touched the ground, and you could see their face. Like,
oh my God.
So then when I talk about attaching the comms cord, I used to do it. So we used to have a bit of fun with them along the way. But yeah.
But I feel like, honestly, that's the type of thing that somebody can, if they're sucking and they are being, like you said, they're standing there, they're freezing cold. But if you give them some little bit of positivity or hilarity to hold on to, that can make the mind move and it can richly distract you to the point where you can push through something there's no way you thought you could have done before. So I respect the hell out of that the way you look at things as a leader, and as a way that you did your best to not only teach, but lead in a way that can be remembered. Number one, some of the best staff members I ever had in the military were terrifyingly quiet.
Yeah.
And there is something to be said for that quiet gray man in the room, because you're not quite sure what the hell's going to come down from them, but you know that you don't want to find out. So if you just do everything you're supposed to, you stay squared away, then nobody has to deal with that. Now, I can't say that I ever had my sergeant whip his penis out and do that, but although he's the type of person that totally would have, so I don't, you know, I respect the way you saw it for that. But something that I know you've touched on with other people before was having females in your course. So I know you had mentioned before that you had the women, and I know I've heard your other podcasts, but you said one of them passed?
Yeah, one of them passed. So what had happened was, so it was my very first course when I went down as an instructor, and there was I can't name her name, but
of course
she'd had 2 attempts before and failed. So you get 3 attempts at the All Arms Commander course. So so when I went down, the previous chief instructor, the previous course officer, and some of the instructors got moved out. You know, they'd been moved out of the course, and then we got another chief instructor, got another course officer, and things like that. It's because they were on the course, the 2 courses that she'd passed. And I don't know whether it was obviously whether she felt that she was being discriminated. I don't know the politics behind it, but straight away there's a change of structure within the training team, and this lady's coming back. Because so the All Arms Commander course is like 10 weeks long. On week 5, you have a thing called the bottom field test. So it's like running around the assault course and then climbing the 30-foot ropes and things like that. If you pass that, and then on
then you can complete the rest.
Of the course, and then you have an injury or something, you come back to that period. You come back to week 5. You don't come back to the beginning. So she'd obviously passed that bit. So she joined us on week 5. But we had another lady officer who was actually a doctor from where I was working in 5-9 Commando.
Okay.
And she was trained by the PTIs and things like that. And she was really good. You know, she gave her all, you know, in everything. And the only thing with her, unfortunately, she couldn't climb the rope, the 30-foot rope. She was about 1.5 feet off this rope, so she never progressed. But when she then dropped off the course, this other female had then come in to do the second half. But her manner and approach was different from the previous one. She sort of almost played the system. She knew that if she went to the doctor, she would get
a chit
for 2 days. So she would time it that the chit would be there 2 days before the commando tests. And I think even if she hadn't, if she hadn't done that and still passed, I don't think there would have been a problem. Yeah, it was just the manner.
Problem in the sense.
Problem from our approach from the team in the way that we judged her, because we judged her as seeing play in the system. But hats off to her, she played the system and she passed. But what people aren't aware of was the background story and why a female needed to pass. I think what because obviously, we were getting blueies from all over the world, oh, what have you done? I mean, this is shocking.
Oh, what year was that?
So this was, what are we now, 2002.
So you guys were on the beginning of that kind of conversation, because I know that conversation started happening in the United States in 2010-ish, 12.
Yeah.
But for Canada, we've been allowed straight away. Do the course, you're allowed to do the job. So
brilliant.
I was like the only female on the guns, because if you can do the job, you can do the job. But there, in terms of selection and things like that, we had the mandatory was if a woman were allowed on the front lines if they can do the job, period. There was never we have to have one, because there was already always one that made it. Or, I mean, she didn't necessarily look like a woman, but she was biologically a woman, and she basically would look like you with hair. She's a beast. If you're going to pass the CSOR and the JTF, you're not going to become an operator though.
No. So, I think with her, but because even her, her cat badge, I don't mean, even if when she did pass, she wasn't in a combat fighting unit anyway. So it was legit. Okay. It was support. So it was more, that's why for me, it was more to pass, be the first person to pass. But the political thing in the background, what they were doing was, if a female hadn't passed, they were going to lower the standards until a female passed, and that would be the standard for males and females. So actually, her passing wasn't a bad thing, and people didn't really understand the implications of that. But I think there's been 2 other females that have passed, and that's why for me, if you're at the standard and you passed, then I've got no questions about it. The only issue we had with that was just the way it was approached.
It was done.
That was it, and that was it. And I think she probably would have done it if she didn't gone sick. But I think she was just trying to give herself the best advantage. Yeah.
Has anybody who has passed that course, have they ever deployed as an actual operations? As
the females, I don't think we still haven't as of yet. And don't hold me to that, but I don't think we have. No, I think this year we've now opened up that females can join the infantry, which is good.
That's new for you guys.
Yeah, which is new for us guys. So obviously the press are like that, well, women can join the special forces, but they don't realize that you've still got to do a minimum of 3 years within the infantry before you then go to special forces. So it'll still be a good couple of years yet if there's anyone in line to do that.
I'd be curious to see how that's going to go, since, Afghanistan is in Iraq and all that are winding down. I know obviously there's other things going on in the world, but I'd be curious to see how that would work, and if a woman would actually ever deploy, just for the simple fact that it's one thing to pass the course, but then now you're deploying with men and you're deploying for 6, 9, 12 months. And being the only female, I just feel like there's going to be, and I'm going to get the feminists coming at me here, but listen, bro, I've done it. I've been in that. I know how that works. I've been around those guys in that time frame, and it's a different conversation.
Oh yeah, no, it is. Well, we have females. We have, you have the SAS and the SBS in our special forces, and then there's a standalone unit called Surveillance Reconnaissance Regiment. We have females in that because females are great surveillance operators. And working alongside a male in some of the environments they're in, it's natural, So we do have women that do that. It's not so much with the weapons, over on the front line.
Okay, interesting. Well, I just found that fascinating when you were talking about that. Yeah, I will say I agree with your sentiment when you say there would have been a lot more respect if she would have just done the course the way the course was designed to be done. But I also get the other side of it. You're giving yourself the best opportunity. But there's something to be said for the people that pass it without having to take chits and take days off. I mean, there's a reason why the course goes as long and as rugged as the course goes. So
Yeah,
I get that.
Yeah, no. Yeah,
You've
cool.
said nothing wrong. Don't worry, Dean.
I'm all good. I'm all good. I'm all good. Yeah, but I think going back to the examples with the students, it's again. I'll give you another one, which I don't know, heard this one. It's quite funny. We used to have a thing called the endurance course, which is basically they start off in a water tunnel, and you just get pushed through. You got your webbing and everything on, and you go through the tunnel, and the instructor gets you. And this is quite nerving for some of the younger lads on the course, because a bit claustrophobic and things like that. So what would normally happen with the Marines, a Marine would come out from the back of the trees in his full attire with his medals and go through. So on this day, we had the two Marine instructors stood in each pool at the end, saying, "No, I'm not going in, you go in." And I, obviously being Army, I was like, "I'll go in, I need a bath," because the Marines call us pongos and stuff. So I went in, and they grabbed me and they pushed me under. But obviously, being a diver at the time, I've got one of these Stases which we use on our kit for when a helicopter comes down, and it gives you about 2 minutes of air. So one of these was already positioned in the tunnel, and no one knew it. So as I up from the two guys on the end, and then I went in and I just started breathing off it, and then. Obviously, I didn't know what was going on outside, but the lads were saying they were just talking about the football and things like that, and they could see the students' faces like that.
Going,
when's he coming? When's he coming? Like that. Then when I got a restriction, I tap his leg, and then he pulled me out, and then I was like, "Whatever you do," I said, "do not go left." And of course, the students like that, obviously the officers and seniors would get it, but the young lads wouldn't. But again,
you can go left. Wait, where's the left?
Oh my God. So it's just bringing that humor in a time where they're already feeling nervous. It's just trying to bring, just trying to relax them as best as possible. So that's one thing I really picked up. And later on, when I went to become an instructor at the dive school as well, again, in that environment, it can be quite alien to some. So it's just introducing humor at the right time and at the right level. Mm-hmm. To just get the best out of your students you could.
Well, that's why you created the students that you've created. And it seems like because of the way that you decided to teach them and give them that capacity to understand that it's okay to have humor, because I feel like that humor, if you're taught that it's acceptable to have that in situations when something really, really bad happens, you're able to turn that on and calm the unit down. And I remember that working with you guys. I keep saying you guys because you're British, so this is what you get. So I'm grouping all of you into one, Dean. So when you guys do that, there is a dark humor to you that allows for that. Okay, we need to pick up and carry on and move on because somebody cracked a joke. You don't dwell on that loss you just had or that IED or whatever it may be. You give yourself that acceptance to laugh for a second and realize that it doesn't have to be this, all the time. It just doesn't.
Yeah. One of the ethos is, not just in the special forces, but the British is humor. You need to have a sense of humor. If you take things too seriously, you're going to be in an early grave. You know what I mean? It's, you need to, because as you know, with the military, whether it's a dark situation, you make humor of it or just the lifestyle of the military, you find yourself in uncomfortable positions or frustrating positions as well. We always say in the military, rush around, wait around. You just have to
hurry up and wait.
Yeah, hurry up and wait. Yeah, so it's one we used to do. We used to start our own little Chinese whispers. Especially when Chinese whispers. So we would just a Chinese whisper. So if you tell a story, your part of the story, the Chinese whispers will go around, and then by the time people misinterpret part of the comments, and then it turns into something else completely.
Telephone. The telephone game.
Yeah. We call it Chinese whispers, and then by the time it comes to you, it's like, That wasn't what was originally
Well,
said. But we used to do that. We used to sit there in the hangar and just start our own Chinese whispers, and then you could see
to
people's
see.
reaction, and it just comes back, and nothing was really happening, but just have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, and that makes all the difference. And I think that's, again, coming back to your leadership skills, and why you were as accepted in the military as you were, is because you were able to have this sense of humor. You were able to not always be the guy that's giving everybody shit every 5 seconds when you came on the course. You're more of that gray man. And I think that holds a lot of water when it comes to going onto a course or being selected for something. So from that point on, you did the course. What made you go, okay, I want to go through selection? I figured you had already beaten yourself badly enough. You're like, let's go hurt myself some more.
Yeah, so obviously when I was on the commando course, when the lads finished their course after their 30 mile and got their green beret, we used to get a presentation from the Special Boat Service, because at the time they were 100% recruited Marines, had just opened their doors, tri-service. So I got a relationship with the course officer there, and it sort of turned my attention to the Special Boat Service. So I went and did a briefing course. You do a 1 week briefing course now. You don't just go on selection and find out you're ill prepared and weren't ready for it and lose a life, because a lot of guys did that, and you only get 2 shots at it. So I went and did their briefing course, and then went on selection actually in the 2003, summer 2003. But January 2003, sorry. But on the hills, my knee blew out. So in 5 days of running up and down the mountains, I had an injury, so I had to come off the course. And thankfully, within 5 days, I had a knee operation. 6 weeks later, I was back running again. So very fortunate.
What'd you do?
So I tore my ACL on that one. I tore my ACL. So that was frustrating. But my approach to that selection, when I was on that one, I was running up and down the North Devon coastal path, which is very steep climbs and just big weights on my shoulder. I was doing what I'd seen other guys do before me, because in Recce Troop we had 100% pass rate on selection. So there's a bit of a self-induced pressure as well on that. And so that I just thought, well, that's worked for people before, that's what I will do. But obviously it had impact and sort of affected my knee. But then when I went, I eventually had to leave 5'9". I did about 8 years at 5'9", and 7 of them was in Recce Troop, because each time, when I got moved to Recce Troop, it was classed as a posting. When I went on the training team to Limpson, although a year was classed as a posting, so I was always going back. And normally in the military, they like to be diverse, get as much experience with the community. So do 3 years here, you then get posted. So 8 years in one run. So I'd gone from a sapper, come out of Colchester prison, gone from a sapper to a sergeant in that one unit, in that one troop. So it was time to leave, and I'd not long finished my diving supervisor course, and I got top student on that. So I got a posting order to the Defence Diving School down in Portsmouth, which is a joint school with the Army and the Navy. And so I went down there, and for me, I thought, right, let's look at selection again. And that's what I did. I then applied for selection from the diving school. But because I was a senior diving instructor, I didn't have time to go run around the mountains and things like that, because I was running courses. So I changed my training. I looked at what worked and what hadn't worked on my first course. So hill-wise, I had the legs. I've got nice big legs and things like that. But speed was what I needed to work on, So I just got on a spinner bike in the evening, just put a Bergen on my back and just got on a spinner bike for 2 hours. And I had 2 junior diving instructors with me, Webby and Scouse. And Webby would come on for an hour, and then Scouse would come on for an hour just to keep me company. And that's what I did. I just did spinning.
You just stayed on it.
Yeah. Just stayed on it. And I didn't realize actually, so we have a thing called the basic fitness test. It's a 1.5 mile run. It's like
we have that.
Yeah. And what's your time? And at the age of 28 as a sergeant, I got my fastest time ever. I did it in 7 minutes 10. And so for me, I thought, right, you've got the speed, you've got the CV. Obviously, being underwater as well, it opens the lungs as well. That had helped. And so I then knew I was ready to go on selection again. And then that's why I then had my second attempt, and everything had worked, taking the pressure off the knees. On the hills, you have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But there was no sort of, you're not going into there any slight niggles or injuries.
When you did your ACL, did they rebuild it with a cadaver, or did they use your hamstring?
So no, so the ACL they did. So the ACL is not like
Like a full tear.
Oh, did I say ACL? No,
Yeah.
I meant lateral meniscus. Sorry, ACL.
Oh, your meniscus.
Sorry,
okay.
yeah. It was my meniscus. Sorry, yeah. So that was an arthroscopy, and they would just go in and just shave it off. So that's why it was such a quick recovery.
I was just gonna say, because you're on the bike, and I'm like, buddy, I've done that. How? Tell me about it.
No. Glad you picked up on that. No, it was my lateral meniscus on the first one, and that's why the recovery was so quick. So then,
Not just a pretty face, Dean. Not just a pretty face.
I just picked up on it, and then went on selection, and it was, it was good. I enjoyed it. We talk about ex-wives. I was going through a divorce at the time, and in custody of my child. So for me, it was almost a getaway. It was almost something I didn't need to share with everyone else. And the hills phase is, is 4 weeks long. It's very arduous. It's the American Special Forces air selection is based on ours. So whether you go SAS or SPS, it doesn't matter. It's a joint selection process. You're running up and down mountains every day. They call it what do they call it? They call it aptitude. So it's just like aptitude. So for 4 weeks, you're just doing this day in, day out. And the instructors don't even know your name. You're just a number to them. But you see
That's
people.
So bad.
Yeah, you see people dropping off. And you start the course at about 200. By the end of that, you're probably easily lost over 50-60% of those guys.
Wow.
So it's a great test. But then once you finish that, that's when selection starts. They say that's just the aptitude. Now we'll get to know your names. And then, so for us, you have to learn everything. We have different weapon systems from the rest of the army as well. So you have to learn. We have different standard operational procedures. So you're learning from everything you've known in the military till then. Some of the stuff, the basic stuff you need to know, but the rest of the stuff, the equipment, you're learning from fresh.
Okay, can I ask a question? I know I keep interrupting you. I'm so sorry. So your weapon systems, wait, hold on. So in basic training, after basic, what weapon systems do you learn in your basic that you didn't learn?
So the Green Army, or I call it the Green Army, the rest of the UK military uses the SA-80, A2 now. We use the C8 DeMarco, Canadian M60. We use that in the Special Forces. So it's only us that use it. So it's the first time you've ever touched this weapon system.
Really?
Yeah. So especially when you're doing range stuff and things like that, and everything we do as well is live firing. We don't fire blanks on selection. Everything is live for real. So your weapon handling has to be slick and on the ball because it's live.
So when you're doing basic and stuff, do you guys do your, I don't know what you would call it. It's like SQ. So it's like, do you not learn your Carl Gustavs, your C7s, your C6, your machine guns, your grenades? You guys don't learn all of that?
Depends what cat badge you are. So for the Royal
Infantry, fair enough. Okay, yeah.
For the infantry, yes, probably they would do all that. The gunners would do theirs. So you've got people here from different backgrounds. You'll have a chef, you'll have a signaller, you'll have an engineer.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's me. It's tri-service. You have them all in. And that's where it's quite good in the fact that it doesn't matter what you've done before. You're almost at a level playing field. Yeah, level playing field. No, some obviously guys like myself being Recce Troops and Pathfinders and things like that would have had some sort of military experience before. But then we go to the jungle for 6 weeks, and this is the equalizer. This is the one that sort of separates, the boys from the men. And it's, again, for me, I was going through a divorce, so I enjoyed it. Time away. UK, whereas a lot of guys, can find it quite claustrophobic, and you used to see guys just leaving every day. The helicopter would come in, you'd hear the helicopter, and it's one of the Hueys. And in the jungle, it's a distinct sound. So you'd have to go to the schoolhouse every morning, and then there'd just be a group just stood alone on the side who just decided, that's me, I had enough. And so for me, it was like, you know, it's not good seeing people leave, but it gives you almost that little motivational boost. So like, well, obviously I'm doing something right, or
You're still here. You're not standing over there with that
you're not
group.
standing over there. You know, you managed to get, you know, I do say 50% is not getting injured. If you get through it
Of
without
course.
being injured, then that's a key one as well. But you see these guys leaving, but the instructors at this point, they play mind games with you as well. So they start, you see them when they start targeting certain individuals, and it's nothing personal. They're just testing your mental resilience, and
They want to see if they
they're
can
getting,
break you.
they're just trying to sort of plant a seed in your head that you're not good enough to be in their unit or part of their team and things like that. I mean, actually then afterwards in the evening, when you sort of in your hammock or laying on the floor, you're sort of thinking to yourself, oh, maybe, you know, why put myself through this? You know, if I'm going to be failed at the end, you know, why not save myself the effort? And it's just mind games. It's just mind
It's
games.
just
You
all
have to
in here.
believe in
Yeah.
yourself that you're good. I remember actually with so a good friend of mine, one of my best friends, he was in the SAS, and this was when I was in Recce Troop in 5/9, and one of the SAS squadrons came to our town to do mobility training, and I'd walked in the bar that night, and I'd had a few drinks, and my opening comment when I walked in was, right, who was the hardest before I walked in, not knowing who was in the room, you know.
Oh no.
The whole squadron from the SAS, of course, they were just like that. But we had a great night. You know, we all had drinks, we did karaoke and things like that. So I found myself, you know, fast forward about 3 years later, I found myself day one in the jungle, and I'm laid down in this fire position, and this huge figure, the big South African lad, SAS instructor, kneels down next to me. He's like, who's the hardest before I walked in? I was like, he was in there. But, and I said, oh, it was me until you arrived, you know. But you have to have that sense. Yeah, it was me. But you have to have that sense of humor, you know. So
I
so
love that so much.
Yeah, so I always joke when they say, "Oh, you've got to be the grey man." I've never been the grey man. You know what I mean? I've either had
You can't be
distinguishing
though.
features, yeah, or my mouth's got me in trouble.
Yeah, but listen to the way your mouth has, you know, carried you now. It's one thing for your mentality to be able to carry you, but then to be able to actually put up instead of just think you're the best. But you don't just think you're the best. You just happen to be. And everybody needs to either get over that or get on board with it.
Yeah, I think there's a balance between confident. You know, we used to have like confidential reports. You must have it as well. You know, an annual report from your officer, and mine used to always say there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. But for me, it was like, if you're confident, I was confident in my abilities, and I knew that we'd do it. And then for me, it's like positivity is contagious. And so if you're confident, it would then rub off on my team. And I used to see that. Our team used to stand out. You know, I remember once going to, we were doing jungle training in Ghana, in Africa. And the other Marine teams the day before got dropped into their LS. But because it was so overgrown, because basically they hadn't cut the LS, they just used the helicopter downdraft to bring the trees down. So the lads couldn't move. And for me, I'm very competitive. So when it was our turn, I did everything in our power, and we managed to get out and to get to the target area. So I
of course
see
you did.
You know, again, you're, especially when you're working alongside the Marines, I mean, that you're an ambassador for your cap badge and your unit. So for me, it was about confidence. Yes, I'm confident that we will do it, but I knew it would then rub off on my team.
For sure, and I can respect the hell out of that. Yeah. Sorry, that's funny.
Some of them are like, oh my God, what's he up to now? You know, we can't do it. I was like, yes, we can do it. Let's
Did you ever get the on your yearly thing? Did you ever get the mouth was the problem?
No, not so much. No, I think it's just the way I sort of carry myself. Because I've got a good sense of humor as well, and things like that. So it's maybe sometimes that it may come across arrogant, but it wasn't meant to be. It's just pure confidence.
No, there was always a joking aspect to it. So you finish out that, and then once you're done, what happens next?
So so we finish selection, and for me, you know, that's like the biggest thing you've done in your career. You then go join your unit, and you're so pumped because you've just spent 6 months on this course. to then find yourself just slotting into a team and no one's really cared about selection. You're just like join the team. But for me, it was great. You know, I never had aspirations of being in the Special Forces as a young boy, and I think for me, going back slightly on selection, I never put myself under any sort of induced pressure. There was guys on that course who, from a young age, you know, young boys, all they've ever wanted to be was a Royal Marine or a para, an SAS or SPS.
Okay.
Or their fathers or their brothers were in the units as well. So they had that additional. I didn't have that, and I could see how it really affected them when they didn't get in. So for me,
the mentality aside,
yeah, it is. You know, so I sort of went in. It is, you know, you do well or you don't do well, and sort of went in with that. You don't take things too seriously. But then when I joined, you then realize you're now working alongside some like-minded individuals. Everyone with very good skill sets, and they're all confident and not arrogant. You know what I mean? So I found myself very comfortable in that position. The reason I went SPS going back rather than SAS was because I was a senior dive instructor, and I was also spent 8 years in Free Commander Brigade with the Green Beret. So it was the natural transition to me. And I thought, well, if I go SAS, I'm going to end up in boat troop because of my diving capabilities. If I go SPS, we're all divers. We're all, you know, level playing field. And it wasn't the case because they still weren't divers yet. Once we finished selection, we have continuation training for 3 months. We then do, you know, to the SAS get their beret and belt. We then get a blue tracksuit and go dive in and do our boating. So you're a more experienced diver than all of them. So I soon found myself within the unit always doing any sort of dive related jobs within the squadron. I was on it. I was the dive rep for the squadron.
But you love the water. You fit right in.
I do love the water. Yeah, I do know. I call me the frogman and things like that. And I am comfortable under there. But when you're doing some of these exercises off the North Sea on the oil rigs, and they only need 4 divers out of 28, and everyone else is still having their coffee waiting for the helicopters, and you're like getting your dive kit on, and you're like, yeah, there's a time and a place. Yeah.
But now looking back at that, I mean, you must miss that. You must miss being able to do that.
Oh yeah, no. Of course I do. You know, I really enjoyed my time there. I joined at a time as well. I was very fortunate. On the height of war and terror, it was the busiest time in UK Special Forces history. You had the SAS in Iraq and the SPS we were running Afghanistan. You know, my first tour, we did the first ever operational jump for the SPS. We then did numerous operational jumps after that. You know, we were ticking all the boxes in a short period of time. You know, we had more HVTs, high visibility targets, on one of our tours and the other 2 squadrons back to back. So we were doing a lot in a short space of time. You know, speak to my friends now who are still in, and they still reflect on that period of time as being one of the best.
What year? What deployment in Afghanistan? Which year are you talking about? Then?
Yeah, so we don't do Herricks. I think they call them Herricks. You know, in the military, we're Task Force 42, TF 42, and it's just called TF 42. So when I was, you know, we were there from. So 2000, and when I was on selection in 2005, and I got out in 2011, so it's that 6-year period there. So, but year 8, 9, and 10, they were really busy.
Oh, buddy, I was there too. Look,
really, yeah. Well,
we're the 09 crew. I was April to September.
Oh yeah, we probably would have been probably similar.
Oh
time.
yeah,
we ripped out just before, but we. I remember we used to go spend a lot of time at Gracelands in Canada, Canadian Special Forces. So we used to come in every Thursday and use their training facility as well. But just timed perfectly with surf and turf night with the clubs. Yeah. So I think they picked up on that quite quickly.
Yeah, we did. I got borrowed by you guys. You didn't have infantry, so you're like, let's find a woman. And then they found me at Fob Ramrod, and they're like, hey, you don't like shooting the 777s, do you? Come with us instead. Let's show you some real fun.
Yeah, no, it was really good down there. You had a great facility down there as well. So, but no, you're right. It was a great time, and things were great. And obviously can't go into too many details for
Yeah,
operational
busy
reasons, but
time,
yeah,
very
busy
busy.
time. But we were about to go back out on another tour, and we're out in Oman. We do our pre-deployment training in Oman. Great facility there. You can do the mobility, you can do the air, same sort of temperatures as well. And we had obviously guys that had just passed selection, so they were doing their hey-ho training, high altitude, high opening training. So you exit the aircraft at 15,000 feet, parachute opens, static line, and then you travel 30 minutes in the air or 50 kilometers to the target area. So they were doing nose jumps, and our sergeant major's like, well, look, there's nothing in the program this morning, just go do fun jumps. And I like parachuting, but there's no such thing as a fun jump in the military.
I was just gonna say, what's fun about this?
Yeah, exactly. So I think we've done a couple of jumps already that day, and I was at number one on the stick. So we do a thing called frogging, where you jump out and you face back into the aircraft and you look like a frog, which used to really upset the parachute jump instructors.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's not written in any sort of TTPs. And so yeah, I then got moved to the middle of the stick on the next jump, and done hundreds of these jumps. Exited the aircraft, got into the seated position as you normally do, but this time my leg somehow got caught in the line above my head, and I'm trying to kick it out in time because I know the parachute's soon to open. Couldn't open it in time, and my leg got pulled up over my head and to the right. Thankfully, the line freed of my boot and didn't take my leg completely off. Otherwise, I would have bled out. And straight away, the pain. I never felt a pain like it, but it was that bad. I was vomiting because of the pain. But because you're at 15,000 feet, you're on the limits of oxygen, so it's really thin, the air, and I was sort of drifting in and out of consciousness. But no one else in the team was aware there's a situation.
Tears.
Oh yeah, it's like that. So I'm sort of checking the team, checking my GPS. Still, got vomit all down me and in pain. And I'm trying to just take any sort of pressure off my leg because it was sore. And then just following the guys, and he still had like 30 minutes. So I looked at their approaches, and because if I got this wrong and damaged, that's both your legs done. So I looked at their approaches and I sort of gauged mine, and I came in and I landed, one-legged. I was like, brilliant. But then just shouted medic straight away. And I remember one of the guys who was close to me was like, that was a good landing. I said, yeah, but the exit wasn't. So they came over. Two of my mates got me onto the back of the helicopter, and then straight to Muscat for an MRI scan. And it came back, tore my ACL, my MCL, my lateral meniscus within the knee, my hamstring, my calf, and my quadriceps. And then all the supporting muscles as well. So you can still operate with an ACL tear, but you need all that supporting muscles with it as well. So obviously that was me. You have to go back to UK, but it was the same time as the Icelandic volcano, which had grounded all the aircraft around the world.
I was in the airport. I know. Really? I was waiting for a flight to go to Scotland, and I did not get on that flight.
Oh, really? So I just So obviously I was there, just thrown in a hotel with painkillers. Wait for an Aeromed flight was about another 3 weeks, and then on these painkillers, already feeling depressed because everyone else is going on tour and you're going home. And that was by the time I got home, got to the hospital, military hospital, sent home again on 6 weeks, came back. They lost all my MRI scans. It was just then a spiral of errors then within the military medical system.
Was that the same knee that you had the issue with the last time?
It was the same knee.
Oh.
The right hand knee. Yeah. So it took 44 weeks before I got an operation in the end. And I had to argue with the military. I think because they realised considering my first operation took 5 days and I had to wait 44 weeks for this. So for me, I had a great career in the military. I loved the military. Unfortunately, it was a little bit of a dark cloud towards the end of the career as I left. But they operated on me, and I left the military, after 16 years. And as you know,
it's impressive, Dean.
Yeah. But all I'd ever known from that time, I would have been a lifer. I'd still been now done 22 years, got commissioned, being a desk jockey somewhere.
And getting fat and soft, and then we would have all made fun of you. You don't need that. That's not your life. That's what you're meant to do.
No, I won't be able to fit through that water tunnel, definitely. But so that was me. I then had to leave. But you asked when I'd met Alana, my wife. So
yes,
I'd met Alana before this period of time when I was in the Special Forces. So my decision going to SBS, because my diving capability, I ended up being a dive rep, and Alana lived in Aberdeen, and they do a lot of offshore oil diving there. So the company that makes our rebreather in the Special Boat Service are based in Aberdeen, and so I got flown up there for a week to speak with that company, and that's when Alana and I had met. So she, I do feel for her, because I think she'd seen a year of Dean, the good Dean, the Dean that was going away on tours and things like that, and the physically fit Dean, and then it was the injury, and then she saw, then she had to sort of almost pick me up, and she's very entrepreneurial, and at the time she's a bank manager for the Free Santander banks in Aberdeen. So when you leave the military, as you know, your transition can be quite turbulent or smooth on a number of things, and I see that more as your support network. And Alana set up my first private security company on her BlackBerry, watching TV, for me. So things that I would normally be worried about, because I'd never had exposure to being in the military, she knew that. That was her normal job, and so that was really key in my transition, and that's where we sort of then really bonded. We knew our strengths and weaknesses. But she was 8 months pregnant when I left the camp. My first worry was, how am I going to support my family? What does the civilian world look like? Because it's very alien to what we're used to.
Of course.
So I was going through what's called an identity crisis. I got to where I'd been in the military because of my physical robustness. I couldn't even run 100 meters now, and it's like, where did my skill sets lie within this community? So without sounding like Liam Neeson, your natural skill sets is private security.
It's okay. You don't have to say. I mean, I'd say that you've got a few up on Liam Neeson. You can, it's fine. You've got a few more than his movie roles. I think being a real Liam Neeson is a totally different ballgame than playing a Liam Neeson. So you can toot your own horn all you want in that, because you deserve that. I wrote down here, because I don't often take notes, but I won't lie, for you, I was like, I gotta fucking this guy squared away. So I need to be squared away here. When you started your own company, so I know a lot of guys that are contractors, okay? But they don't start their own private security firm. They just get calls and wait for calls from people like you. Why did you do it that way? That seems like a way more complicated way of doing things.
Yeah, no, I had that option. For me, I didn't want to be going back to Afghans and Iraqs and things like that on these rotations, 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off, and things like that. A lot of my mates were set up their own private security companies because of their background, were tackling piracy off the east coast of Africa. So I didn't want to start treading on their toes either. There was also an opportunity to go work with the UAE Special Forces. So a lot of the guys who were getting out as well had jobs there, which is very secure and very similar to what they've been doing anyway. But for me, I wanted, it's probably the character that I am. I wanted to find a niche. I wanted to have my own company. I spent the last 16 years in some sort of peer system. You had someone you had to speak to and things like that. And I was like, well, I want to run my own business.
The boss.
And Alana being entrepreneurial, she knew about accounting, taxes, and things like that, which puts a lot of people off when they're leaving. And so if I knew that she could deal with that, I knew I was a sociable character and I could do the networking. So that's why I was very fortunate to have someone like Alana that I did ad hoc. I didn't know where the next job was coming in. It was the next phone call and things like that, rather than having that comfort and stability, knowing there's going to be money in there. And that actually worked in our favor in the long term. Very worrying at the beginning, but within 48 hours, I got phone call, can I help set up the British Embassy in Libya during the Arab Spring? I did that job. And then your next phone call, can you go to Guinea and meet the president and the prime minister, who are hosting some diplomats from the UAE? And your next phone call is London Olympics. So I was getting exposure to a broader area of the security sector rather than just a certain area that I'd worked in. And I'd realized as well that the security industry isn't reward ratio balanced at all. So guys that will be out in Afghan and Iraq probably on £300 a day, £250 a day. You could be working with taking the UAE Royal Family super yacht from Barcelona to Maldives on double that, or in a 5-star hotel with visa at the World Cup. So
you did it properly.
yeah. The corporate was where the money was. The corporate was where the money was, with the less risk. And so that's where I was sort of trying to channel my attention to more the corporate element.
Well, I think that's important. There was a part in the book that I want to highlight, because I think, well, from what I can tell, and I know that Alana obviously brought that up to you, but I want to say this to you too, for whatever it means, is you evacuated an embassy during something really, really serious. And I'm sorry, but that is such an accomplishment. And I know she's told you that, and I know so many people have, and it doesn't even touch onto some of the things that you didn't write about, because obviously I don't know your full life, but what I do know is that is incredibly impressive. And I think that you should really take that and really, I know you do, but hold on to that, because that's not something a normal person could ever do, or even on their own.
It was those early stages. I was trying to find a niche within industry. How am I going to stand out from others? My friends were doing the maritime stuff. You had these larger security companies which were pretty much dominating your Afghans and Iraqs and things like that. But actually, when I was in Libya, I soon identified that these larger security companies were charging 6-7-figure sums for crisis management and evacuation plans, when there was actually nothing really in place, which was quite worrying, because if you were contracted by that company, you'd expect them to have some sort of support network, and it's quite commonplace. I'm hearing it still nowadays.
That's troubling.
Yeah, it's troubling. Yeah, but also the Libyans didn't want it being another Afghan in Iraq and things like that. So there was a huge proliferation of weapons at the time. I thought, well, I'll take advantage of that. Now, the only thing that we were lacking was ammunition, and so that's I did. Alana gave birth to Molly, and I came back in and I bought 30 weapons on the black market, and I buried them between Tunis and Egypt, got Pelly cases in and put comms kit in there and put some money in there. And I just designed my own evacuation plans. Something we've done before, cache systems, because I knew that should something go wrong, we couldn't come in with weapons, but we could easily fly in or drive across the border knowing where they were positioned. And that's what I did. Living in Aberdeen, which is the oil and gas capital of Europe, I had exposures to some of the oil and gas sector there. And I put my proposal down, and they'd been let down before by some of these big companies. And I said, well, no, this is in place. And that's what I did. I sat on it, hopefully never needed it. And 2012, just finished London Olympics, and the American ambassador got murdered or killed in Benghazi, and I think they filmed 13 hours was the film.
The 13 hours, yeah.
Yeah, so I was there that evening, and I asked if I could help KCA Deutag, a German engineers, get back to Tripoli. So that's what I did. I had safe houses in the desert, and I just moved them from Benghazi through the safe houses back to Tripoli. And again, never had to dig up my weapons. It was just understanding more the demographics and the politics. And then 2 years later, got the same phone call from the Canadian embassy. They were stuck in the Tripoli war. So they had their own CP team, which was protecting the diplomats. But they normally rotate every 4 months out the country, and they would fly out from the international airport. But the international airport had now been burnt down. So their first port of exit was now gone. But during that period, when they're on their tour within Tripoli, they'd never really left the city walls, and so they never had exposure of what was outside of there. So obviously at that point, I'd already taken US aid out in a couple of taxis, keeping it all low profile, and came in and sort of assisted these guys. Went and spoke to all the tribal elders along the way, Zawiya and Sabra, all the way down to the border. and then gave them that full intelligence picture as well. Put their kit in a fish wagons, because the fish wagons would daily go through the borders. So it wasn't something that was strange for the border staff to see. So it was just utilizing that sort of local knowledge as well. So again, so we got them safely out and back to Tunis. So again,
God, that's impressive.
But never had to dig up the weapons. It was all about, understanding, because everyone has this perception of special forces being, offensive action, which is, yes, what we do, 25% of what we do, and that's normally last resort. 50% is that hearts and minds support and influence. And that's, I think that's where I was successful in the security industry, not just on that task, but I used to go to Somalia on my own and things like that. And people used to see that
a white guy with big ears in Somalia that's going to get his head cut off.
Yeah, but you understand their culture. You understand that it's not as is seen on the TV back home. So sat there in Somalia, having dinner with one of the potential clients and his family, and he's getting emails every day from US Brit companies, all offering the same services. We're all ex-special forces. But he's like, well, you've actually taken the risk to come out here and physically see what's going on. And I think that's where I was successful within the industry. Is every client's unique and different.
Well, the mindset that you bring to it, it's one thing to have unique clients, but you see it from you see it in a simplistic way, which it doesn't need to be more difficult than that. One thing I really liked about your book, which I didn't hear a lot of in other military books or in other podcasts, was you took the time to understand the local community. And something you touched on, which I think is important, is you feel bad for the regular service member that never get to see outside of FOB. You only ever think of being shot at by these Middle Eastern people who hate you so much, but you never get to see that other side of the community and what that means and what that looks like. And they're just people, like you said, who just want to live their lives, who want to love their families and want to be safe when they go to and from school or to and from work. And that is something that we have glorified in the military so much, and the civilian population, since those wars have kind of happened and are still currently happening, we've glorified this idea that there's such hatred towards these countries, when really it's because the lack of experience in getting to sit down with the locals and have these conversations. And I think that's what struck me so much about what you said, is because it's so rare that we actually hear that.
Yeah, no, it is. And you're right. You have those who have been in FOBs and all they've ever known is mortars coming in and fighting an enemy. So for me, I was very fortunate to see that, and from the other side, and sort of reflect on that. Unfortunately, with the world of media nowadays, everyone's very quick to tarnish a certain community with one brush. But it's a very, 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 very small minority is bad. The rest are just almost tarnished
people.
Yeah, people. So I talk about evacuating the embassy, evacuating KCA Deutag, and there was other jobs that I did as well. But if it wasn't for that local influence and community, they wouldn't have been successful. And that's one thing I like to get across. It's not me on my own. It's utilizing and having the respect of the locals, and it's all about communication and trust. So for me to go out on my own to these countries, they trusted me.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it's not like you could have hidden well. I'm sorry. I mean, you touch the very beginning of the book, buddy. I mean, you touch on the fact that you fucked up because you forgot your contacts. I mean, I'm shocked that it was just the contacts that gave you away. I'm sorry.
I'll send you the photo privately, but yeah, it's full on.
Yes.
Full on a lot. You look like a local. But I didn't actually. The thing is, I didn't fuck up. I thought I'd fucked up, and it wasn't. It was just the fact the turban was caught in the door. It wasn't my contact lenses.
Oh my gosh, that's insane to me, because it's like the smallest thing that would give you away. It's no different when you go somewhere as a deployed member. My favorite thing they used to make me do is tuck your hair in so you look like a man. I'm like, well, I'm either just like a stunted man or I just have a weird voice, and then that's a whole questionable issue on its own. Yeah. I know I don't have you for much longer because I'm trying to be very respectful of the fact that you're a big deal, but I do want to touch base. And this might not be something, but you did bring it up in the book. So I feel like it gave me gave me the rights to bring it up. Death or divorce. That's a strong woman to be able to sit there in front of you and say, hey, it's time.
Yeah.
Let's have this conversation.
Yeah, I think when we, we're very driven, both Alana and I. So, when I got out, I was just going out getting work, just trying to support the family, find a niche within the industry. And when I come back, Alana would be doing everything. So Alana went and did a close protection course, surveillance course as well. When she found out when she was on the close protection course that she was pregnant with our first daughter, so she never really got an opportunity to start off it. With me, because that was what it was. It was going to be a husband-wife thing. I thought there's a niche there.
Okay.
The original plan, there was a niche in that, in the corporate. So obviously she would be managing the company. She'd be dealing with clients, doing the contracts and things like that. I mean, it got to days where I would come in, drop off one bag and then pick up another bag and fly out that afternoon. And it was sort of like always passing in the wind. Financially we were better off, but actually relationship-wise, we weren't having opportunity to talk. And so I came home from the Canadian Embassy job. My dad had passed away earlier that year, and literally I buried him and went out the next day because a client needed me in South Africa for a big high-profile court case. And so
was that the case? Is that the case I'm thinking of?
Which case?
With the bathroom situation and the shooting?
The what?
With the bathroom situation and the shooting, and that was what's his name? They called him like the Blade Runner.
No. Sorry, the sports guy. No, it wasn't. No. It wasn't
the sports guy.
Yeah. No, it wasn't him. It was actually a witness coming from UK that. It was all to do with wealth management. It would have had ratifications against the government, so he had death threats against him.
Oh, fantastic.
I'd already taken him in the year before, and he had to go back in, and my dad had passed away, and he said, look, don't worry about it. I said, no, I'm coming. And I buried my dad and flew straight out to, I'd sort of disconnected myself from society. I was just so fixated on getting the jobs done and things like that. So I came home from that trip, and Alana had highlighted I'd only been home 21 days in a whole year, 365-day calendar.
Wow.
And I thought that she wanted me to go, because obviously she was accepting the jobs and things like that. But also, during this period, Lana's a property developer. She's doing her own businesses as well. And she said, well, no, I thought you wanted to go away. And it was actually against that lack of communication. Yeah. So we sat down that evening over a couple of bottles of wine and sort of realized that I hadn't even addressed the fact that my dad had passed away. I hadn't even had opportunity to even mourn that at this point. And also the fact that I hadn't come to terms with the fact that I'd left the Special Forces. I was still trying to live this lifestyle, thinking that I had my mates on the other end, and they'll be coming and parachuting and rescuing me with all the aircraft and battleships set off the coast. You had nothing. You were on your own, and if something had gone wrong, it could have gone wrong quite bad. But thankfully, I was confident in my plan, and they were successful. But it's that lottery. How long do you keep pushing it before something does go wrong? And so, yes. Dead or Divorce was the chapter 16. This was the period in her life that something had to change. And Alana said, well, look, come do property developing with her. And that's what I did, yeah.
It's funny because I remember the moment when they tried to make me do a civilian job for the first time. It is painful. It is so painful. And it's not painful because you don't value the job. It's painful because when you go from running the way you're running to trying now to be this other person, I can respect why you didn't. What I loved is what she did. Instead of saying to you, well, hey, suck it up, go talk to a counselor, start taking all this medication and sort your shit out. You need to be present. You need to be here. She just gave you a record book and was like, you need to go beat something. And this is where you come into my world a little bit more. And this is the road bike world. And I want to get into this.
Yeah. So I this is probably 5 years now, having left the military to this period. So during the time that I was working in the security industry, I was just fixated on work, and my own physical well-being had sort of deteriorated. My injured leg now was 2 kilos lighter than my good leg.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And so I hadn't done any sort of CV, and I had a TRX that I'd attached to the hotel door room and have a little throw around on that. But nothing to sing home about. So I just bought a push bike. Our office was about 8 miles from our house. So I just bought a push bike, and it was a cyclocross because the potholes are quite bad in Aberdeen. And I remember getting it, getting out the box, and cycling had evolved so much. I remember cycling off, and I bought these cleats, I bought everything. I didn't have a clue, and I didn't know where the gears were. I didn't realize they were actually in the brakes. I was looking for the little things on the top,
ones up here.
handlebars. Yeah. So I had to go back home and Google it, and oh yeah, there it is. So I just cycled to and from the office, but 8 miles wasn't much, but being physically active again, as in like CV wise, it almost felt like it was a huge weight off my shoulders again. And so Alana, as we touched on, was a property developer. So I sat in these meetings with her, and you can imagine with my backstory to now, I wasn't interested. She could see that non-emotional face that I haven't got. And I was actually feeding Tommy. I was feeding Tommy, our second son, while Alana was doing the business, and he just felt like, is this my life now? So I was a month before my 40th birthday, and I've always fancied doing a world record. And Alana said, well, what in? I said, well, cycling doesn't seem to be impacting my knee. I knew I had it endurance-wise and things like that. And so I was living in Scotland. I fought Aberdeen to Dundee or Glasgow and back. And then Alana then found the world's longest road from southern Argentina to northern Alaska. So it runs 14,000 miles, called the Pan American Highway. So it's the equivalent.
No big deal.
Yeah, no big deal.
Not that long.
It's not that bad. But no, we had actually looked at Cairo to Cape Town, which was, Africa, top of Africa, the bottom of Africa. But having worked majority of my time in the security industry in Africa, I wanted to see something different. Obviously I had a challenge, but I wanted to be taken in by scenery and cultures and things like that. So that's why this one was more attractive. You had the whole of South America, Central America, North America, Canada, and Alaska. So the equivalent of cycling from London to Sydney and then 4,000 miles because of the curvature of the earth.
Madness.
So having only still cycled less than 20 miles, I thought perfect. I applied for the world record, which sounds quite arrogant. And 6 weeks later, Guinness came back and said, yeah, you've been successful on your application. So I wasn't a cyclist, but I knew from my time in the military to private security, it was all about planning and preparation. I thought, well, I can do that in this challenge. And then as I started learning more about cyclists, I can then evolve that into my plan. So that's what I did. I applied for the world record, and Guinness came back and said, yeah, you've been successful. So start planning this.
That's just wild to me. I've done, for God's sake, when I read that you did that, like legitimately did it, and then did it in, was it 99 days, and you beat the record by what, 18 days? Because you're like, I don't want to just look at the record. I'll just destroy it. So then no one can ever beat it ever.
But it wasn't the original plan. When I applied for the world record, it was 125 days when I applied for it. 6 weeks later, when Guinness came back, Carlos, who's a Mexican guy, had already beaten it by 8 days. So it was now 117 days. So that was the new target. When I did all the planning and stuff, there's a lot more to it, as as a cyclist, and just grabbing a banana and a water bottle and heading north.
Yeah.
When you've got a support team, when you've got a documentary team as well, and you've got the charity angle of it as well, there's so much you need to be thinking about. And it was really, what would work, for example, in Chile wouldn't be the same in Peru or Ecuador. So each country was unique in itself. So for me, it was really good. For me, I was getting back and had something to
that
plan.
Planning aspect that you could really dial in really well.
And I thought, for me, that with the Guinness guidelines, there's so many guidelines anyway. So it was then just charity. All you had to do was cycle as fast as you can. But yeah, 117 days. But when I did the planning, there was stuff that was out of my control, like natural disasters, coups, maybe third-party influence. So rather than encountering that and then finding yourself behind time, I took that week and just pushed it aside. That wasn't ever in the picture. So my target was 110 days. So should we encounter any of that, it was eating into that, we call it fudge, eating into that week's fudge and not into your challenge. So I'd spoken to the previous record holders. They'd all gone north, south. And
I was just going to ask you, did they do the same way? Like, why did you want to go south north instead of north south?
Yeah, so one of the things we do in the special forces, I think, one of the reasons with one of the best in the world is not because we've got the best caliber of guys and best training. It's because we're always learning, we're always evolving and learning from mistakes. And one thing we used to do when we used to come off the ground on ops or even on exercise, we'd have, before we go clean our weapon or deservice ourselves, was, 3 questions. It's a hot debrief, what worked, what didn't work, and if you were going to do it again, what would you do differently? So I was buying bike magazines and I was reading articles. I wasn't getting the information I needed to help me plan this. So I reached out to the previous record holders, and apparently they're really open about their communication. And Carlos, I could only download his. He was Mexican, and read what his encounters were. But all their encounters, they started in the north and the south. All their issues were in South and Central America. So for me, I thought, well, why take a gamble?
Pass it first.
Yeah, why don't you get all those issues out of the way first? And then when we get into America, we can see where we are in regards to the record and then adjust accordingly. So that's what I did. One thing I'm proud of, I just turned it on its head and went south-north. And yeah, so we did that. And from a cycling perspective, it worked out in my favor. I had a tailwind all the way through Peru. That's 2,500 kilometers of tailwind.
Oh, so that's a good tailwind to have, my friend, instead of a headwind. That would have sucked. I bet you would have lost a whole day on that headwind alone.
We had the strong winds in Ushuaia down in 40-mile-an-hour crosswinds for a week, and that was difficult. But then I crashed my bike in Chile, got food poisoning, in Peru. Yeah. I
was laughing in my car by myself driving to work, and I'm not gonna lie, like I was laughing out loud because I got to the point where you're like, saw them merging. I'm not even going to try to do your accent. You're like, I saw them merging into one lane, and then I saw a sign and I was like, I'm going to just duck through this. And I'm like, that's something I would have done, and then destroyed my face off the bar. I'm sorry. That was so funny. I'm sure it hurt. I'm sure it sucked, but that shit was hilarious.
Oh yeah. It was a big eye opener for me. I think because so for your listeners, the 2 lanes of traffic was merging into one, and then the right-hand lane had a sign which was obviously pointing to go into the first lane. But I saw beyond the sign there was no traffic. I thought, well, I'll just limbo that. So I just went as fast as I could. I was unaware about the bar that ran across the bottom, which the wheel hit, and then I just stopped. But I think because I wasn't aware of it, I hadn't braced up, I hadn't
relaxed,
and I just bounced across the road. Punctured the wheels on the bike. We had to change the fork on the bike because there was a hairline fracture in it. And we have 2 bikes. You have one with spares. You can have as many wheels and tires as you want, which is good. But you have 2 bikes identical. And and that's what we did. We swapped that over. But actually, it was I had a heart murmur because of the heart rate monitor. I got a big bruise on my breast because of the GoPro. And then I had a tracking device in the back of my Lycra. And so it was actually all these additional devices which gave me harm rather than actually. But for me, a real eye-opener how things could have easily gone wrong. It could have been really serious. Check the collarbone.
Your collarbone.
Yeah, the lot. Yeah.
Over.
Yeah, so very lucky. Obviously a bit more cautious as I approached signs after that.
When you started riding your road bike, I love that you said you bought the clips right away. Did you ever have one of those situations? Like I feel like you never tipped. Did you ever tip over with your cleats still clipped?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
You always do. Yeah, I had all those issues. I'd never. I remember I did Land's End John O'Groats, which is the southern point of UK to northern Scotland as a training ride. And I thought, well, I'll do that. Only ever cycled 3 weeks, and there's that. During that period, I started falling off, and I learned the hard way about cycling. But for me, if I couldn't do one, how was I going to do 15? Because it's equivalent to 15 UK's length of UK.
Oh, is that what it is? Eh?
Yeah. So for me, mentally, if I couldn't do one, how was I going to do 15? And that's why I decided to do that. I did it again 6 months later with some of the Invictus Games guys. And I don't mean to sound arrogant. I understand for a lot of UK cyclists it's on their bucket list, but for me it was a training ride, and I had to approach it as 9 days.
Yeah, well, it's there's no offense taken. I can understand that. I have a similar mindset too. It's like, well, one thing that might be considered somebody's like hardest thing they've ever done in their life, I have a really hard time with that because I kind of just sit there and go, Okay, I'm proud of you for completing that with some positive mindset. I try to be really positive about it, but it takes a certain person to be able to do certain things. And like you said, your body, as long as your body was good, it was your mentality. And if you can get your mentality and your mental health to click and just get that little thing, my husband he teases me all the time. It's if you can just shut off, if you shut off and let the body do the work.
Yeah.
Oh, buddy, you're not going to be able to stop that person no matter what they want to do. And that's exactly what you did.
Yeah, I mean, I was getting physically stronger. You know, before I went out there, I'd never cycled 150 miles in a day. But when I got to
I was sitting.
Yeah.
I was sitting in the saddle.
I actually all the no, I had no saddle sores. You know, my legs were good. You know, the only thing was really pressure points on your hands and a bit of pain in the neck because you're constantly having to look over your
shoulder check.
Shoulders. But other than that, I was quite strong, which was good. And then obviously you're getting physically stronger and then mentally stronger as well. And by the time I got to Peru, I had that tailwind, and anything less than 150 miles a day just wasn't enough.
Well, I feel like for your mental health, I feel like that needs to be like, you know what you remind me of? And this is the most respect. Just know these are my analogies, okay?
Yeah.
You remind me of like one of those Australian puppies that always cattle huts, and they have to be run. If you do not run them, you do not work them, they nip. They get cranky and they nip at your ankles.
Yeah.
You have to be run.
That's my you know, one of the, you know, maybe mentioned that I did it for a campaign for mental health.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that if you're okay talking about the charity aspect.
Yeah. So obviously, a friend of I met back in 2007, Prince Harry. So him and I were on a training course in the military together, and we've maintained friendships for 14 years since, and still do a lot of work together. When I left the military, I did a lot of charity work in the military sector. He also did a lot of stuff with Invictus as well. I had an intelligence fusion cell based in Mozambique and Tanzania, which used to identify the smuggling routes for the ivory. And he used to obviously relay information for him. So he was my first port of call when Guinness came back and said, "You've been successful." I said, "I'm going to cycle the world's longest road and break a world record." And I remember him saying, "Oh, are you a cyclist?" I said, "No." And he sort of laughed.
Makes sense said, then for you.
Yeah, I'll do a campaign next year called Heads Together, which focuses on mental health. And I'd seen it in the military, but I wasn't aware how big it was throughout the whole of society. So that was the campaign that I was going to raise money for. And I set a target of £1 million. But actually, when we were in the early stages, you know, they were like, "Well, what's the messaging? What are you trying to promote it?" And I was like, I hadn't really thought about it because Harry just asked me to do it. So I said, "Look, physical activity helps your mental state." And they said, "Oh, no, can't use that. It's not been scientifically proven." I said, "It's fine."
But it is. It's so proven.
It is now. It is now. This is back in 2016.
I guess.
So I ignored them anyway and just carried on using that message. And actually do a lot of guest speaking around the world. And I did one actually for Scottish football and Scottish rugby. And I made that comment, and then afterwards a doctor came up to me with a big folder. He slams it on the desk. He says, "It's now been signed."
My life's work. How are you not catching on?
So going back to what you were saying is, like the nippy dogs. You know, I need to be physically active, just so Alana can bear living with me. She knows when I get grouchy, it's time to train.
Well, it's fair enough. I can respect that. There's something with bikes too. I don't know if you noticed it or if it was just that you picked bikes because it was easiest on your knees, but there's something about riding alone by yourself. And when you get on a stretch and you're by yourself and you're going fast and you got a nice tailwind and there's something so serene about that.
Yeah. No, there is, you know, on this one, you know, I understand why people cycle and go for runs, because almost an hour or 2 hours away where you can just clear your mind. But for me, for this challenge, it had the opposite effect. I ended up being on the bike for 10 hours and you start over-analyzing things. So what would work for others on a short ride wasn't for me. But if you have the tailwinds, good. You know, with this bike ride, it was everything from plus 47 degrees centigrade to minus 18 in Alaska. You had 60-mile-an-hour winds and tornadoes. You had snow. You know, it was everything, which I liked. You know, I'd done that in the military, you know, very fortunate to go desert, Arctic, jungle, but I hadn't done
Mm-hmm.
it on a bike. And I think that's where that sort of helped me as a non-cyclist, but a military guy, is that you've operated in those environments, so you know how to operate. For other cyclists who haven't experienced the heats of the
Mm-hmm.
deserts or the Arctics, it might have been a bit more difficult.
No, I can understand that. I choose not to ride in anything below 10 degrees. I won't
Yeah,
do it.
no,
I
so
don't feel like hurting myself and putting myself, it's too cold. I'm over it. I'm at a point where I can choose when I ride, and it's not
I'm in,
then.
I'm in Southern California. I'm a cycling snob.
Oh, I know. Well, yeah, you've turned into one. How long have you been in California for?
We arrived in October, mid October,
Okay.
not long, yeah. So
Just just in time to get locked the fuck down. That's
yeah,
poor
exactly.
soul of yours. Oh, at least you had sun. At least you had sun. So I'll give you that. So I had no idea when I reached out to you that you had any sort of connection with are we allowed to call him Prince Harry still?
Yeah, or Harry, yeah, Harry.
The redheaded stepchild.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
gonna call him that.
exactly.
I knew about him when I was in, because a friend of mine who used to be a brand ambassador of mine actually did a walk with him across Europe. And
Okay.
then Invictus, Trevor Green is a buddy of mine, and he
Right.
lives over on the island here. And so we're involved with the similar charities. And he's like, yeah, he's such a nice guy. Like, you're going to have to meet him sometime. And I was like, yeah, he's doing his thing. You let him do his thing. But I didn't know about this charity. And this is what I was really excited about, is because this is what I do.
Okay.
I have a company that supports charities like this. So can you please explain to my listeners how incredible this charity is that you raised this money for?
Yeah, so heads together. So I think William, Harry, and Kate at the time.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, mental health was very much a taboo. Um, they wanted to destigmatize it and get people to talk about their own mental health. But as I mentioned before, I was aware about mental health within the military. You know, I'd seen it firsthand. But when I sat down with Harry, I wasn't aware. In everything from postnatal depression, young children, teenagers, and social media having a big impact on that, all the way through to fully grown adults. You know, it's the biggest killer of men in the UK under the age of like 40. You know, I didn't know anything about that at all before I started doing this campaign. And the fact that they got their names behind it, they launched it at the London Marathon and very much became the topic of conversation. And most corporates now, it's part of their corporate social responsibility.
Good.
So they sort of changed the attitude towards it. And you know, the fact that Harry talks openly about his mental health, you know, it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter whether you're a member of the royal family or you're a fireman or whatever. You know, everyone has an element of it, and it's also how to deal with it. So for me, I was promoting sort of physical activity element on it, and I set a target of £1 million, and we raised £930,000 or $1.2 million for the campaign. So for me, that was more impressive than the bike ride for myself.
Congratulations, Dean.
Yeah, Alana was the key around that. You know, she sort of managed all that. We got about 900,000 from the corporate donors, which was great, and only 30,000 through the giving page. But my PR team has said you showed no emotion on your challenge. It was like, and for me, I had an objective. You know, I wasn't going to go on there and cry and things like that. I was trying to promote the unrelenting pursuit of excellence. So I sort of joked, there's a radio presenter back in UK who she cycled 100 miles and cried every other mile and raises £250,000. And then there's a gentleman from Radio 1, our top radio station, who couldn't do his 3 Peaks challenge. So he has a little meltdown on TV and gets £1 million. So I always joke that I should have started crying when I hit that sign in Chile and just flown home. But I was trying to promote that the realms of possible, and then the unrelenting pursuit of excellence. If you go, and the unrelenting pursuit of excellence, which I commonly quote, is a great ethos. It's not just because it's special forces, not just sport. It could be anything you do. If you're going to do something, you do it to the best of your ability, and I emphasize your ability, because nowadays people always look at social medias and try and, you know,
who's doing this and how do I compare and compete?
Yeah, and it's like, you know, that's a bluff. You know, I mean, it's, you know, a lot of people said to me when I was cycling, you know, you're not a cyclist. I was that, well, you need, you know, I was like, you're not me. You don't know what I've had up until now.
Yeah.
You know, so I had a sport team with me and the mechanic. He's like, you can't sustain this. I'm like,
watch me.
yeah, who are you comparing me to, you or, you know what I mean? And the numbers just got bigger and bigger.
That's
So
so impressive though. I love your attitude towards it because it so easily could have been, you could have so easily, like in the book, you talk about how you had a trainer and you're like the second, just the second they got negative, the
yeah,
second they gave you that response of negativity, they had to go because you can't have them in your realm. You just
yeah,
can't.
you can't have that around you. You know, you know. I always say the hardest thing, no, the easiest thing was the bike ride. The hardest thing was coming off and dealing with sort of negativity. And you know, as I talked earlier on in the podcast, positivity is contagious. You know,
Mm-hmm.
negativity is contagious. So if there's any negativity, just get rid of it. And that's what I did. And thankfully, I had Alana who was still running everything around me. And from when that support team then left, the numbers got bigger. The target had changed. You know, I got to North America on day 70, and I was 14 days ahead. I was like, perfect, and I could take a day off here or there. And then Alana
Yeah.
rang me 5 times, and then told me we'd been invited to Harry and Meghan's wedding, which just changed the dynamics completely. So going into the phone call, I was 14 days ahead. 10 minutes later,
Mm-hmm.
I'm now a day behind. I've got a new target to beat. So everything
Yeah.
you've done up until now doesn't really matter. So for me, you know, I had to then change the plan as well. You know, change the way I
Mm-hmm.
cycled. In South and Central America, it was from first light to last light because of security. I didn't have that limit in America. I could cycle at night, and then I just play chess with Mother Nature through the winds, just try to give everything to my advantage. So yeah, it's I talk about how important planning is, but again, that sort of military mindset of being reactive. Things don't always go to plan, and you just need to react
Mm-hmm.
to the situation that's in front of you, and that was success to this.
Well, it was nice to see, and I want to bring this back to Alana because I think she's an incredible human. And like I told you before I started this, like I messaged her before I even had you on because I wanted to acknowledge her in a way that I feel like, it's your job. This is your book. This is your life. And this is what you're putting out to the world. And, so many people are going to see and read and hear, your side of what it's like to have that support system. But I think, I know she knows she's appreciated and I know she knows she feels that, but I wanted to really acknowledge that to her because I know what it's like to have a child and I know what it's like to go through things like, not saying she did, but postpartum depression on top of PTS. I know what it's like to have those things and have that support system. And the fact that she was able to provide that with you in a way that she didn't try to change you, didn't try to silence you or make you be this other person. She took you as you were. She watched you grow into who you were. And then
Yeah,
she supported that all along of that. And I
yeah,
think that's one of the most beautiful things and hardest things to do. She was essentially, if I'm not wrong, a single mom a lot of the time that you
yeah,
guys had your young little ones.
yeah. Sorry, talking about little ones. What is it? My son,
No, don't you ever
4-year-old,
apologize. If there's a tiny human in there, I
yes,
am fine with tiny humans.
4-year-old son just walked in. You know, let me take it. Yeah, no, you're right. She did all that. She ran. Cause I generally believe that anyone can break a world record. And that's not me being sounding arrogant to anyone. If you take away all those distractions, someone's running the
Mm-hmm.
family, someone's running the business, paying the mortgage. And she made it very easy for me. All I had to do was concentrate on that, and that's what she does really well. And I do it with my guest speaking. We talk about the special forces. For every one operator to go on the ground, it takes 7 other people within the military, be it the pilot, the armorer,
Mm-hmm.
the chef. It's a team that people don't see, and they need appreciating from the bottom level up. But Alana is, yeah, she's a powerhouse in herself, and we know our strengths and weaknesses. I can't do tax returns or or sign or do the contracts
Mm-hmm.
on the sociable one, but she then comes in and nails it down. But
Well,
no,
I'm so glad that I'm honestly, I'm so glad that you met her in that week that you're up there because I think you needed someone like her because if you didn't, you wouldn't be here right now.
oh no,
I really believe
I
that.
wouldn't be telling this story at all. No, without a doubt.
No, I don't know that there would have been a story. That's what I mean. I feel like it would have been cut short because she was able to see the bigger perspective and sometimes just having that and giving that ability for someone in your family to look outside of, step outside and go, "Hey, you're going to die eventually if you don't, but be brazen, be honest and be forward thinking with that because it takes a person like that." And then to have, so hold on, how many kids do you have?
I have 2 kids, Molly and Tommy. So Molly's 9
Yeah.
and 4. Yeah.
Yeah. And no, because you said at the very beginning of the podcast there, you were dealing with
Oh yeah, sorry, with Alana I have 2. I have children, my ex-partners. Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm on
that's why you threw me
yeah.
there.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I always joke. I've got Charlie fire team and one from Delta fire team. Five in total.
Sorry, that's
2 boys.
Oh, so you wanted a football team of your own?
Yeah. I've started my own unit. Yeah. That's what I said. Charlie and Delta. I just need 3 more, and I've got Delta fire team. I've got a section.
I feel like Alana has enough to deal with you that she doesn't need 3 more to try to kind of manage at the same time.
She doesn't.
No, so your little girl at the end of the book, I'll just touch on this quickly because I think it shows to the father that you are and the husband that you are. You've instilled such good qualities in your daughter that she was willing to cut her hair off for a charity.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I think one of the things we really push on is we do all these great things, but it's always for a great cause, philanthropy wise, and it's all about education as well. So whether it's mental health or modern slavery, human trafficking, we don't try and hide the world to the kids, and we don't want them thinking this is what you see on TV. We show them another side, but then they're very traveled. They travel with us. They've been Australia, Dubai, Thailand, Alaska. We try and give them exposure to everything, because I do feel like these days it's all about this, and it's not. It's just education with them. But yeah, my daughter's got a really kind heart. She obviously gets that from her mum, and my son's got my temper.
That's okay. Well, you work on the temper. But the question is, does your son have your ears?
No, I think my daughter has my ears, but she's got long hair, so she hides it. My son's not too bad at the moment. Yeah.
Oh, well, we'll give it time. Those ears do grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dean, I'm going to let you go there. Because I know you have another podcast to get to, but, your story is a value add to this world. And I think there's a difference between people who write books and then people who write books. And your story, it doesn't need to be just a book, but it needs to be something that people look towards, that they show to their families as examples, and they teach to their kids that you can literally do and be anything you want to be. And that is not a stereotype. And that is not look, that person plays tennis. You can do whatever you want. It's like, well, no, that's not how that works. That's not the real world. Let's get on board here. And I just want to say that I appreciate your time. I appreciate the way that you have really gone above and beyond to tell your story, because it will help and change and improve our world, whether it's through the military, through the way that we do selection, through the way that we train our soldiers, to the private security and how we keep our people safe when they're trying to do real things in other parts of the world, all the way down to just the way that you are as a family man, because that's incredibly important in my life and in my listeners' lives, but also the way that you raise your kids and how much you respect the hell out of your wife, because that is also few and far between nowadays, and having that partnership. So I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast. And is there anything else I've missed that you want to drop real quick?
No, I don't know. I think we've mentioned my ears a few times on this podcast. So probably a bit paranoid.
That's what I do.
Yeah, exactly.
Good.
No, it's all good.
Stay paranoid. I like to keep you that way.
No, excellent. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much, Dean. And we'll chat with you guys all next week.